Tonight, in his own book, Batman must fight against a virus that has overtaken the citizens that he is sworn to protect. In Justice League, Batman must fight against a virus that has overtaken the citizens... Hold on a second. Yep, that's right. That is not a typo. That's weird. And in Batman and Robin, they have managed to undo death itself, luckily not through the use of a virus. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 172 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep it real brief, or at least as brief as I can, because not only do I have 16 comics to talk about, but one of them is Multiversity, which always takes an extra long time. So just one thing I wanted to make you aware of going into this before I list off the comics is that next week is Christmas Eve. And I said this at the end of last week's episode, but I'll say it again here. DC, being DC, put out 23 comics. I'm not doing 23 comics. So when we hit the end of the show, I will tell you specifically which comics I'm doing that week and which ones I am delaying to New Year's Eve instead. Okay? Cool? Great. Anyway, comics coming out this week in alphabetical order because I have messed up this month's sheet that I read this off of. We have Batman, Batman Superman, Batman and Robin, Batman Eternal, Batwoman, Catwoman, Earth 2 World's End, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League, Multiversity Thunderworld, Future's End, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Teen Titans, Trinity of Sin, and Wonder Woman. It is a packed week. I'm sure you can already tell by the runtime that I am not about to keep this brief, so let's just run right into whatever the first comic is, which I think pretty obviously has to be Multiversity. The Multiversity Thunderworld #1, written by Grant Morrison, art by Cameron Stewart. So, this issue picks up at the Rock of Eternity on, well, technically the Rock of Eternity is at the center of the multiverse, so it's not specifically in an Earth, but this is Earth 5. So, we open up with the narration coming literally from the wizard Shazam. And he's saying, poised at the most dazzling place, the borderland of what is from what might have been. And as we cut inside, he's like, oh, it's you. Hi, I was just practicing my omniscient narrator voice. And we see him looking over this calendar. And I am the guardian of time's starry overlook, the wizard Shazam. Anytime there's a problem, I can send down my champion, Captain Marvel. And I've maintained the seasons and the forces since time immemorial. And he looks down at the calendar and says, that's weird. There's an unfamiliar day on my cosmic calendar. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Savannah Day. And as he's saying that, the Rock of Eternity gets attacked, and he's like, wait a minute, this has never happened in eternity. And as he looks out the window, he says, wait a minute, a second eternity? And the Rock of Eternity is this giant diamond shape. And behind it, we see this technologically made with pipes and gears and stuff, much bigger Rock of Eternity. And it says, greetings, it is I, Professor Savannah, Dr. Savannah, whatever his name is. And he says, yep, we tracked down the Rock of Eternity by tracing, Captain Marvel's lightning source to see where his magical lightning came from. And you, my 3 children, are going to be my guinea pigs. And he's like, yes, I am your father, and we will duplicate Captain Marvel's power source. And we see there's one very attractive child named Magnificent Kiss, and the other ones just look exactly like Savannah. And it's just like, oh, say my name. And they all say Savannah, and some black lightning comes down, zaps them, and they turn into super muscular superheroes. Or villains, I guess I should say. And Savannah's like, the one who brings me Captain Marvel broken and in defeat will win first prize. So we then go down to Fawcett City, where time is all messed up. There's cavemen and Indians and spaceships and flying cars and World War II stuff and dinosaurs. And Billy is on a phone, like a smartphone, and he's getting a news beat, I guess. And he's reporting this as like, oh, we're making history. This is Billy Batson for Wiz Live. And we see the guys running Wiz Live are like, oh, that Batson's report is dynamite. So as he's doing the report, in comes a second Billy Batson who says, hey, I'm you from tomorrow. Look at the sun. Look at the clock. And Billy's like, what? What are you saying? And he's holding this handful of crystals and says, you have to warn Captain Marvel, the wizard's in trouble. This is caused by an artificial 8th day that's been inserted between your today and my today. It's an impossible day, the day that Captain Marvel dies. And he starts fading away and says, oh, Black Sivana is coming. And this all started when Sivana's saying, you think, and then we cut over to the 3 Sivana family members saying, oh, you think you're so clever, don't you? So they're about to throw a car at him, and Billy says, hey, look over there. And they all look, and he says, Shazam, turns into Captain Marvel. And it's like, oh, I protected Billy Batson, and yeah, I don't think I'm alone. Billy's safe and don't think I'm alone. And as they're about to hit him with a card, he whistles super loud, summoning Freddy and Mary, who also say Shazam. And we see him just tank the card hit. So we then cut back to Sivana, who is reading through the Society of Superheroes issue of Multiversity saying, oh, parallel worlds have been sending messages to each other through comic books. And so I've managed to speak through the multiverse to all the different versions of Sivana, and we will rule the multiverse because we have each gotten a little bit of suspendium and have all sent it to this universe so that I can artificially build time. I'll have enough to build years, centuries, an entire empire of just Sivana. And we see in the Rock of Eternity, they're mining out even more crystallized time, to which the wizard is like, you're digging out magic, man. You keep digging that out, the whole universe is going to go kaput. It's not going to be a good thing. And he's just like, dude, you have crystallized time here. I could sell this for a fortune. Imagine wasting your whole life and then just buying a new one. That's freaking great. So at that point, the wizard's like, where did you get enough to make a whole day of creation? He's like, I imported it from other universes. Now I just need the secret source of Captain Marvel's lightning. And the wizard's just like, oh, as my magic dies, I'm getting weaker too. I'm becoming forgetful. Only Captain Marvel can save us. And he holds up his scepter, and that's where Sivana realizes, oh, of course, the lightning staff. Gimme. So back down on Earth, Batson is fighting against... He's just called Sivana. There's Sivana Jr. and Mrs. Sivana. Just know that's happening. So it's Captain Sivana, and he punches him, manages to send him through a billboard. Miss Sivana and Sivana Jr. are holding him down where Marvel's trying to get over to Sivana because he is landed on some railway tracks and manages to pick up a railway full of people. And that's where Captain Marvel Jr. and Mrs. Marvel come in. And as they are distracted by the other two, the 2 Sivanas get spun around like a tornado by Captain Marvel. And so then they join in the rest of the fight. So Mary Marvel is fighting against Sivana, and it's everyone takes one of their own. But we do see that Sivana Jr. manages to cover Billy's eyes. So then Freddy comes in, hits him with a bulldozer, and sends him all the way to the moon. And then Mary starts arguing with Miss Sivana and is like, Miss Savannah's like, you're not even that hot. I'm hot and you're not anymore. And mind you, she started as like someone who looked like Dr. Savannah. So it's not even like she's always been this hot. And that's where Mary's like, hey, Freddy, come over, settle this. Is she actually that hot? And he's like, yeah, kind of. Yeah, no, she's absolutely beautiful. Wow, you're like the most beautiful person ever. Please tell me your name. I need to know the name of this beautiful woman. And she's like, oh my God, you think I'm beautiful? Yeah, my name is Georgia Savannah. And because she says Savannah, she transforms back into her normal self. So then Freddy is able to wrap up steel girder around her mouth to stop her from talking. But as all this is going on, turns out that these Sivana family was only there to keep the Marvel family distracted as the Monster Society starts to attack the city. And they said, that should keep you busy while my father conquers the multiverse. So at that point, we then get the Lieutenant Marvels coming in, which I don't recognize any of them except for Talking Tawny, but they all have guns and such, and they're ready to take on the Monster Society. Captain Marvel says, hey, I don't want to leave you guys in the lurch, but like, if they're doing something in the multiverse, I got to get back to the Rock of Eternity. And it's like, yeah, don't worry about it. We got it. So they fly off to go help the Wizard Shazam or he goes off to do that as the rest of them take on the Monster Society. So Billy flies down into the subway and he's like, oh, well, this is the place where Billy first got his powers. I should be able to get to the multiverse here. And as he flies down in the subway, we get this double page spread of this like whole thing. There's this army of like trains that are all just approaching him, seemingly representing something in the multiverse. And then we cut to Sivana as he's speaking to the Legion of Sivanas. And he's like, oh, Sivanas, this will be the end, the death of Captain Marvel. And we cut to one of the Sivanas who's covered in blood, wearing a Hannibal Lecter mask. And he's like, oh, bring them to me. The pretty little heroine, the bright boy. I can't wait to mess them up bad. And normal Sivana's like, yeah, man, sure, okay. So Captain Marvel gets in. He starts having to fight his way through robots. We then see a normal Sivana who's like, oh, well, I'd rather try to negotiate with them. I'm a Nobel Prize winning scientist. I thought this was all about saving the world. But you guys, all of my parallel counterparts are criminals? What the hell? And then we cut back to the serial killer one. He's just like, I used a time travel trick to kill my Captain Marvel before he was born. Now I need more new Marvels to torture. So we then see Captain Marvel manages to make his way to the center room, and Sivana's like, oh, it's the 8th day of Sivana, you see, my perfect day where Captain Marvel dies. And he's like, we'll see about that. And the wizard's still in a cage, just like, oh, the 8th day's not over yet. Don't, beware, don't give that up to him. So at that point, Sivana, holding the staff, says his own name, Sivana, and he becomes Black Sivana, which is Black Adam Sivana. And he's like, oh, it works. I perfected the equation. Black Sivana lives. So at that point, they get into a philosophical debate about magic and science. And Sivana believes that science trumps magic because it's more understood for him. Like, he knows how it works. And he says, like, oh, what chance is the speed of Hermes against the velocity of a photon? But then Batson basically says, hey, they're two sides of the same coin. Like, it's all just human ingenuity. So as Black Sivana is about to attack, Captain Marvel says Shazam again, manages to explode the lightning bolt so that Black Sivana gets blasted back, and they knock over a thing of the time crystals, which then allows Billy to remember, oh, right, I ran into a previous version of myself. So he picks up the time crystals, and we see him talking to the previous version of himself, saying all the stuff he said before. And then Black Sivana's like, oh, you think you're so clever, don't you? Continuing on with the same exact lines, and he transforms back into Captain Marvel, saying Shazam. And as it looks like he's held up and he's unable to do anything, Captain Marvel reveals, hey, too bad, your day's already ended. And he's like, what? No, it isn't. And he's like, yeah, all the other Sivanas did the same thing that you would have done. They scrimped on the amount of suspendium they sent you. So it turns out that your day was actually only like 8 hours long. So you lose, you're out of time. We're now past the day where Captain Marvel can lose. And therefore, when he says, curse you, Sivana, he transforms back into his normal self. And he's like, oh, but I can change back. I can do it again. And he's like, nope, that was yesterday. There's been a paradigm shift. Any other day, you lose like every other time. And he holds them up, showing them to the multiverse of Sivanas, and they all log off, including Serial Killer 1, who says, oh, this isn't over. Now that I've seen that girl, I want that girl. So Wizard Shazam comes up saying, oh, you never do fail me. I chose well with you. He goes back to the Fawcett City, and Monster Society's been taken out by the group. And as the time dings on the next morning, Captain Marvel reads the Society of Superheroes comic, and Freddy comes in saying like, oh yeah, I sell a ton of those DC and major books down at the newsstand, but SOS, they canceled that book. And as Captain Marvel's reading it, he's like, no wonder, whatever happened to happy endings? I'll get out and destroy everything? That sounds to me like tomorrow's adventure. And they all just get up and fly into the sky, just happy as can be. So, Multiversity, everybody. I like it. I think I know it's not disconnected. Like, I remember something from a later issue of Multiversity that we're going to get that time back into, I think, very quickly now. But it feels the most like all of these other stories have had this dourness to them. have had this like, oh, like this is the darkness of the Gentry corrupting things and making things worse. But this is the first one where it feels like, no, this is just happy. This is just a good ending. Like, it's still a positive thing. We are still able to fight back in some way. So I like that. I like the fact that this idea that Fawcett City, Earth 5, Thunderworld is just an incorruptible force of good. It just never, maybe it's because it was absorbed into DC Comics prior to like things getting dark and gritty during the, like, you know, modern age of comics transition. It's just constantly stuck in that golden / silver age world where everything is nice and happy. And I like that. I think it's a nice thing to have in the multiverse. So overall, I think I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think the only thing holding me back from a 9 is I just don't have as much of a connection with Captain Marvel / Shazam. It's like my current connection with him is what was reintroduced in the New 52, which kind of goes against the entire thesis statement of this book. Like, that's a messed up version of Billy. That's Billy who's like a crap kid who's just like a dick. And this is, no, he's just a good kid. He's golly gee, you know? He's great. So, yeah, I'll give it an 8.5. I think it's very good. Green Lantern New Guardians number 37, written by Justin Jordan, art by Diogenes Neves and Rodney Buchemi. So this is the next part of Godhead. The only things that have happened in between this and the last issue, where Kyle and Carol got cast down onto the actual Earth part of New Genesis, is that John Stewart and Saint Walker are now teamed up with one of the new gods named Malhedron, who is turned against Highfather. So we open up on Old Genesis, where Kyle and Carol are just looking up at the ship as it's going away. It's just all the way up there. And he's like, well, how do we get up here? And Carol's coming up with a plan, and he's like, maybe you could, and she's like, don't suggest that I build a plane. Don't even try that. And she's like, well, do you know how? And he's like, no, I don't know how. Also, we're on a planet that is just full of junk. And like, I'm so pissed off at you. And he's like, what? Why? What's going on? And he's like caught off guard. He doesn't know what to do about this. And Carol's like, look, we got into this situation because of you acting rashly, and like I felt upset about that, but like I also have to think about how the Guardians played us. But the part that upsets me the most, Kyle, is because of 2 issues ago when you were losing control of your powers, you, however accidentally it was, turned me into your dead girlfriend. I had her memories. I remembered being dead. That was not cool for me, Kyle. And she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And she's like, look, I don't want to hear an apology, but like right now we just need to get back onto New Genesis. Like, that's all we got to do. And then a voice from the side says, yeah, that's exactly what you need. And in comes Metron. And immediately he's just like, oh, hi, look, here's the thing. I advise Highfather every once in a while, but my true allegiance is to knowledge and balance. And I feel that the balance may be dangerously tipped in one direction. And Kyle just throws a rock at his head. And he's like, ow, seriously, man? Really? You just throw a rock? And he's like, yeah, he's in a flying chair. We need a flying chair. Gonna throw a rock. So Metron's like, look, if you're done doing that, I can help the balance here. I'm not going to get you back up there directly, and I'm not going to help you out with getting the ring. However, I may be able to point out something that, you know, maybe you didn't think of. This here on Old Genesis used to be a civilization, and this is just the rubble after all the fighting. And there used to be the ability for any person of Genesis descent to use the technology that now only the higher-ups can use. And he causes the rubble to disintegrate to reveal an old mother box and says, be careful, I think it's only got one teleport left in it. So we go to the Catacombs of New Genesis, and this is where Saint Walker and John Stewart are talking to Malhedron, and they're basically saying like, okay, look, Malhedron is not in a position to fight. He's been beaten pretty badly here. Saint Walker's like, I wish I could help your wounds, but I'm still emo. Man, Hope is dead. Hope is just dead. And Malhedron's like, we need to get out of here. I got my mother box. Let's bail. And John's like, no, look, Kyle is alive. He's somewhere here. We need him. I'm staying. And St. Walker's like, yeah, so am I. And John was like, is that Hope? And it's just like, no, he was my friend. I'm just not going to run from this. Ring or no ring, I want to help Kyle out. So Malhedron hops in the boom tube. He's like, all right, but I'm done. Bye. So he boom tubes out, and it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? And John says, all right, well, we got to find a way or something to fight with before they find us. All of a sudden, boom tube opens up behind him like, ah, crap. But out steps Kyle and Carol. And immediately John's like, oh, you son of a bitch, you're supposed to be dead. And Sam Walker's just got the goofiest grin on his face as he runs out and hugs Kyle. And just like, oh, I'm so sorry, Sam Walker. I thought I was doing the right thing, but like, there was a lot of wrong things done instead. But like, I swear we'll figure it out. And Carol goes up to John, and John's just like, I'm not going to ask where you've been, but like, why are you guys not in your costumes? And Kyle's like, yeah, we kind of lost the white ring, and then Carol burned out her ring as well. So we've just been trying to get up here onto New Genesis. And it's like, why wouldn't he kill you? Why would he still need you alive? And it's like, I don't know, but maybe we could use that to our advantage. So at that point, Sam Walker hears something. He tackles Kyle to the ground. They start getting attacked. John puts up a barricade of Green Lantern energy, and Kyle's like, hold up. He didn't kill me for a reason. We can use that. There's going to be a tiny window here where you can get their weapons. You got to trust me, John. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So he drops the Green Lantern thing. Everyone immediately stops firing. Kyle comes out and he's like, I'm guessing you have orders not to kill me. And they say, all right, surrender. And he's like, or what? And he jumps in and he starts fighting against them, just hand to hand. And John and St. Walker and Carol take the lead. They understand what they have to do, and they jump into the fight. Carol and St. Walker immediately get surrounded, and they're about to get blasted when all of a sudden the tridents that are being fired from these scepters are pointed at each other. So therefore, John manages to pull them up at the last second with a construct, and Kyle steals one of the last scepters to blast away the last card. And he's like, hey, all right, so now we got some weapons. That's cool. Let's do it. And they thinking like, okay, well, maybe we can teleport to Highfather. Do we still have the cube? And it's like, yeah, but it's dead. And it's like, all right, well, we're doing this the old-fashioned way. Let's go find him manually. So we go to the Singularity Stockade, where the Guardians have now been kept with their Green Lanterns. And it's like, hey, this blocks Green Lantern energy, but it doesn't block our energy because we got a much more ancient power behind us. So we're just going to bounce. And the only reason you got captured was because we wanted to be here anyway. So, bye. And they start flying up out, just leaving the other Green Lanterns behind. We then see Highfather, somewhere in between the panels, was found by John and Kyle and co. So, they're already starting to attack him. And we see Highfather's like, oh, even before I possessed the life equation, you guys had nothing against me. Like, what makes you think you got anything now? And it's like, oh, we're not. We're just hoping to slow you down and maybe distract you while we do this. And then Kyle jumps in with the scepter, manages to blast Highfather's scepter out of his hand. The white ring goes scattering on the floor. He leaps forward as John provides backup. And he puts the ring back on and says, let's see how you like dealing with a white lantern. And it doesn't work. It doesn't turn on. And Highfather's like, you stupid idiots. And he throws John Stewart into them, just being like, this scepter is merely a tool. The ring, unnecessary. I am the life equation. Now bow before me. And he transforms himself, he reforms the scepter, and he blasts all of them with the white energy, seemingly disintegrating them, as he says, you are no longer required. So I'm definitely super sure they're all dead in this random issue of this random event in the middle of Green Lantern New Guardians. Yeah, no, it's honestly, it's a fine issue. I think it does a lot to forward the plot very quickly here, and that's something I've always had a problem with in these Green Lantern books, is that it feels like the Green Lantern book proper is the only one that's allowed to forward the event. This one feels like, no, we've taken elements from like different books here, and we've actually managed to move stuff ahead in them. So good on them. I think that I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it a 7.5. And the only reason why it's not getting the 8 here is because a couple of weird little art moments. As much as I love Sam Walker's goofy grin, it is a strange choice of artwork. And then also there is a, I don't know, there's this recurring thing of whatever the issue was that feels like it should be a bigger deal is just immediately Deus Exed. It's just solved immediately. Like, oh, we're stuck down here on this planet and there's no way out. And then literally a god shows up and says, here's a machine to get you out of it. And it's just like, all right, was it even really a problem then? Like, what are we doing? So a little bit lower there, but still very readable book at a 7.5. Batman number 37, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. Continuing on the Endgame arc, we, at the end of the last issue, had the Joker's return. Turns out he was an Arkham Asylum, helper guy for the past, year and a half. And it looks like he shot Batman after paralyzing him. Turns out, he didn't. So we open up this issue with Batman being stuck in this paralyzed state. He's in the Batcave. Alfred and Julia are looking over the whole map of Gotham, and he's just seeing biohazard symbols popping up until finally he just breaks out of his paralyzed state. And Alfred's like, "Oh, hey, you've come out of it. You're awake." And he's like, "I was awake the whole time. I just couldn't do anything about it. It just sucked." Okay, fine, whatever. He released the virus. Okay, do we have a handle on that? And it's to some extent, it took us a while to get to you in the first place. The city was already going crazy. CDC's trying to do some stuff, but it's nuts. And they pull up the thing of the virus and they say, yeah, so basically here's the virus that he made. It's similar to his previous stuff that you made a protocol for, and we ran all the simulations on it for all of the antitoxins, but none of them are working. None of them. And he's every time we're about to knock it out, it finds a way to basically resurrect itself. And Batman's like, look, we've made hundreds of cures for thousands of toxins. It's fine. We'll just test some more. And Julia's like, no, man, you don't get it. We tested all of the previous ones. None of these got even close to it. There's something that we can't overpower. And Batman's like, all right, well, let's pull up the first case. Where was that? And he's like, oh, it was at a hospital, Gotham Presbyterian. So he walked in there, or whoever it was that was patient zero walked in there. They were a carrier. They got to have some sort of initial resistance. So we got to find out what patient zero has and be able to take an antibody from them. So we then cut to Jim Gordon, who gets a phone call from Batman, and he's like, hey, man, I've been sitting here with a trank gun just waiting for you to tell me that you got the antitoxin. Tell me that's what you're here for. And he's like, no, I've been a bit out of it. Look, I'm on my way now. I'm going to go deal with it. And Gordon basically explains yeah, okay, look, I've been listening to what's been going on. It's spreading faster than they can contain it. If we don't find a cure in the next few hours, they're going to wall off the city. No one's going to be allowed to leave Gotham. And so Batman's flying into the city center and Gordon's like, hey, if you're heading in there, you got to know it's messed up out there. It's really messed up. Something about the virus makes it so that the people, when they get infected, go after the people that they like the most. And considering that Gotham has a pretty good opinion of you, you might be the most sworn person in this city. And as he says that, we see Batman flying over, and they're just huge crowds of just wildly grinning people looking up at Batman. And he's like, okay, all right, that's unsettling, but it's just a virus. It's curable. We can do this. So he goes into the hospital and he breaks his way in, and he's like, oh, by the way, you need to be aware that this hospital, it's a spooky place, Batman. It's one of the oldest ones since it had so many tragedies. Stay safe. And he's like, yeah, we'll do. So he gets in, he gasses the place because everyone inside is already hit with the Joker toxin. He manages to duck his way into a surgical room, but of course there are surgeons in there as well who are like, oh, you can't be in there. And they all start laughing, and people trying to break down the door are also laughing. And Batman's just absolutely not amused by this. Meanwhile, Gordon, I guess wanting to pass the time, brought up the stories from the hospital. And how it was filled with tragedies over the years. And it's oh yes, the one was starting a fire in 1910 that took the deaths of nearly 50 patients. And he looks at the newspaper article that was scanned in online. And as he is about to just pass it off as, oh, it's just negligence, not Satan himself, he looks in the picture and he sees what he swears is the Joker hidden in the shadows. And so then he looks up more of the tragedies that are associated with this place, medicines exchanged for rat poison, and he sees in the picture, there's Joker. Apparently his kids, Barbara and Jim Gordon Jr., they got some sort of cough or flu or something like that. They had to go into the hospital, and he checks the picture that he has in a drawer of them. And there in the corner, once again, is the Joker. And he's like, what in the hell is going on, man? So he hears a noise from inside the room. He draws his gun, walks over to the closet. He's like, oh, if you're in there, you got 10 seconds to hit the floor. And then a boxing glove on a spring comes punching out, hits him in the face. And as Jim falls to the floor, underneath the bed is the Joker saying, knock, knock. So we then go to where Patient Zero is, and we see Batman going in. He's trying to get into their security codes and whatnot, but as he gets his way in there, he sees that the person who is Patient Zero is Joe Chill, the guy who killed his parents, and he realizes, oh crap, the Joker knows. He knows everything. This is, oh no. So somehow the lights turn out in this place, and there is a fake facade of Crime Alley with the Mask of Zorro playing in a theater, and out steps Duke Thomas, the young boy from Zero Year, and his parents, and they are dressed like the Wayne family, and they are stepping out of the fake theater, and Bruce is like, no, we're not doing this again. So back at Gordon's place, Joker crawls out from under the bed, and he's like, hey, I got some new jokes for you. And Jim's just like, no way, man. Get the hell out of here. I'm done with this. And Joker snaps his fingers and the curtains catch on fire. And he's like, see, a little gasoline and some flint in the shoes. I got a whole new routine here. So we just keep on intercutting between the two. But to go with the Joker side of things first, room starts going up in flames. Joker's got an axe that he's brandishing at Gordon. Gordon's got his gun. He's aiming it. And he's like, step any closer, man. I swear to God, I will drop you. And Gordon, holds true to his word. As Joker comes forward, he slashes an axe down, breaks Gordon's desk, and then Gordon takes the shot. But intercut with all that, we see Duke and his parents are moving through the diorama. Out comes Joe Chill. He pulls his gun, and his Batman's like, no, not again, not again. He's behind glass. He can't do anything to stop it. But it seems that Joe Chill also feels the same way. He says, no, not again, not again. Bruce does finally break through the glass. He jumps in the way of the bullet, takes it through the chest, and of course he's wearing armor or whatnot, but because of all the people who were laughing out in the hallway, they've all managed to break their way in the room. It's too late for Duke's parents. They've already been taken, but Batman manages to grab Duke and get him out of there. As he's doing so, Jim Gordon hops on the phone to Batman and says, hey, look, I hope you got a cure and all that, but if you didn't, I just shot Joker. And he's laughing, not laughing. He's smiling, he's crying, he's so happy about this. He's like, it's done, it's over. Meanwhile, Batman's going past a maternity ward with all the babies in the little bins, and he's like, don't look at it, Jesus Christ, please, this is too messed up. And as Jim is saying, hey, at least we killed the Joker, Joker stands up in the fire, and we hear Jim Gordon scream. Batman leaps out a window with Duke, and as they're flying away from the scene, Joker picks up the phone and says, hello, Bruce. So, big issue. And we got Duke Thomas involved again. God damn, Scott Snyder will not rest until 30% of the bad characters are his creations. That's unfair, but at the same time, it's not that far off. So, I like it. I think it's a solid issue. I can't really point to anything that I really disliked about it, except that it just felt very quick. From beginning to end, including the cheesecake ending last time of oh, did Bruce get shot in that Arkham cell? And then it just picks up with Alfred saying, and then we got you out of Arkham and brought you here. It's oh, well, all right, I guess that happened. There was no in-between there of why didn't Joker just do it already? So, yeah, I'm gonna say this one is good. I think it is definitely setting up this more idea of Joker being this eternal Gothamite, he's just this never-dying force of nature. And I'm of two minds with that. Obviously, I don't like the idea the Joker is more than just a man, but I like the fact that we're at least hinting at something more with him. It's adding something creative to the mix. So I'm going to give this one an 8, and we'll move on from there. Batman and Robin number 37, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. So last issue, we finally have the standoff between Batman and Darkseid, and this issue is literally just, who's gonna win? So we open up with Darkseid just basically saying, hey, super cool to see you, Batman. You left some scars on my body, and I'm really pissed off. And Batman's like, bring it. So immediately, Darkseid's like, look, you Earthlings mess me up pretty bad, whatever. And Kalibak is like running into the fight. He wants all a part of this. And as Darkseid and Batman are just talking about their previous fight on Earth Zero, Bruce just opens up a boom tube and lets Kalibak fall through it, so he's not going to be part of the fight anymore. And Darkseid's like, all right, well, we're not letting you use this mother box anymore, so he crushes that. And Batman's like, don't worry, I'm not looking for an escape route. So he punches Darkseid. Actually looks like he manages to draw some blood to begin with. And we see he just keeps on trying to lay into him, like not let up at all. We see that the rest of the Bat group are there, and they're a bit concerned because the mother box got destroyed. And Cyborg's a bit messed up ever since being fried by the cannon. So they are basically reluctant to do anything. But Batgirl says, okay, I got to crack you open, Cyborg, and try to fix your insides. So Batman starts getting attacked by Batman starts getting attacked by Darkseid and gets thrown over the side of one of these magma pits along with Damian's sarcophagus and the crystal. And so he dives in after it, grabs both of them and says, Cyborg, get the boom tube open. I got everything I needed. Let's go. And before we can do that, Darkseid just comes down and just pile drives him. So Batgirl's doing her best. She's like really freaking out here, though. She's like, this is really messed up. I don't think I can do this. And Cyborg's like, look, I'll talk you through it. Everything's going to be fine. No problem. Meanwhile, Bruce is like literally being torn apart by Darkseid here. And Darkseid says, oh, hey, this is the Chaos Crystal thing. If you've been touching this without proper, protection, suits or whatever, and you're not a god, it's going to mess you up. And it looks like it already has. So all that to get this corpse, what's so special about that? And he's got Batman's head underneath his boot, and he's basically saying, like, look, this Chaos Sliver showed you something, but it didn't show you the unimaginable horror of what I would do to you if you got into my hands. And Bruce something in him snaps. He manages to, I'm not even entirely sure, he makes, like, the black cloud of bats. I don't think we ever got an explanation to how he does that, but regardless, he makes them. It overwhelms Darkseid for a second, but Darkseid then just grabs hold of Bruce and starts like snapping his back between his arms. He throws him across the room, and then, wouldn't you know it, Cyborg managed to get fixed. So Bruce sees the boom tube is open, everything's ready to go, but Darkseid's standing in the way, and he's got the sarcophagus, and he's like, I'm going to kill you now. I'm just going to do that. And Bruce's like, fine, do it. So Darkseid charges up his beams and fires them off, and then Bruce holds up the Chaos Crystal, which absorbs the Omega beams to be incredibly more powerful than they were before. So now that they're absorbed, Batman says, take all remaining energy in the suit, fire it through the chest. And the suit's like, that's going to kill you. He's like, do it. So he fires off all the energy into Darkseid, blasting him against the wall, and all of them manage to make it through the boom tube. As Darkseid is managing to recover, Kalibak comes in being like, let me at him, let me go through, I'm going to beat him up on the other side of the portal. And Darkseid's like, nah, let him go. We're going to see him again real soon. So everyone managed to make it back through the portal. Immediately, they realize that Bruce's suit is counting down. He's like, you got 2 minutes till you're dead, bro. So he gets the sarcophagus. He starts trying to like type codes open in order to get it off. We see he blasts off the helmet of the suit to reveal that his face is like cracked and stony like Darkseid's. He finally manages to eject the gloves in order to break open the sarcophagus. And he takes the crystal, and we see in his mind he has images of not only Damian's death, but also of his parents' death. And he says, no, stop, don't make me choose. But he takes the crystal, shoves it in the sarcophagus, saying the Omega Sanction, the death that this time is truly life. And he stabs it into the sarcophagus. Huge explosion, blasts away all the stony bits off Bruce's face, turns him back into a normal person. As Damian comes to, he slowly wakes up and he sees his father, and they hug, and everyone's like, holy crap, Batman just undid death. And as Damian's coming to, he's like, I remember getting stabbed through the stomach. Was that a thing? He's just like, no, don't worry about that. You're here, you're fine, you're wide awake, we got you. And then Bruce collapses and he falls to the ground, seemingly dead because of the stress that he went through. And that is the issue to be continued in Robin Rises Alpha. So I like it. Here's the thing. You're resurrecting a character. Like, it is a retcon. It is something where this character died, I think like 2 years ago now at this point, and you are jumping through hoops to make it reasonable that they could come back. It's always going to be a little bit tough. There's never going to be a truly great way to do it. But I think that this story went through the paces to say, okay, it's enough. There is enough here for it to make sense that this happened. The fact that, Darkseid has used the Omega Sanction before to send Batman back through time. That was all set up in Final Crisis. They reused it again here to say, okay, but mixed together with this crystal, it makes some magic hoodoo, whatever, that just ends up working. I'm fine with the method. I think the idea that they do it in this issue rather than the Robin Rises Alpha book, and then try to hit you with but Batman's dead, as if, like, DC's gonna kill Bruce Wayne in, like, this book and not the main Batman book or an event or something like that, I think that it's just kind of a little bit skeevy there, but other than that, it's a fine enough issue. All in all, I'm gonna say 7.5, and the only reason it's not getting the 8 for me is that there's a little bit with the art where it feels like it's going a bit too big, and I lose track of what's actually happening. It goes a bit too stylistic, I guess is the way I want to say it. So yeah, 7.5, still very good. I think it's the moment where he comes back, it's like 3 straight pages of nothing but silence until finally Damian speaks. That's very well done. It's great writing. It's just a few little nitpicks here and there that bring it down a tiny bit for me. Batman Superman number 17, written by Greg Pak, art by Ardian Syaf. So this picks up after last issue where some new person who we're just going to call Superman's version of the Joker, a psycho who's just killing all of his buddies, simultaneously attacked 3 people, one of which is Lex Luthor, and they were all shot. And Superman rushes off. He goes to try to help it. Batman's like, hey, whatever that voice was, it's not on the comms. It's literally speaking through our head. Like, he's some level of psychic, but I can't track that. And Superman's just very quickly trying to fly his way. He goes to Metropolis. Before he gets there, we see Lex Luthor, who's wearing his power armor suit. The suit's just like burning out from the inside. There's nothing anyone can do because the power armor is like stuck to Lex. It's not supposed to be able to be broken open. So they think Lex is going to die. Lex calls out for Superman, and Superman just comes in, rips the armor off of him, and lifts him up. And Lex is like, oh, my hero. And Superman's like, was it you? Are you the one who did this? Like, did you people are being murdered with invisible bullets, and that seems like something right up your alley, Luthor. And he's like, what? No, that ain't me. Like, look, you're one of the few people who could puncture my armor, so that's the only person I could think that did that. And Superman's like, okay, well, I just saved your life, so that's clearly not the answer here. So at that point, one of his assistants comes up with a tablet, just like, oh, okay, I see why you're so upset. You came to save me, and the other 2 were left to die. Oh, well, I'm flattered that you came for me. And Superman's like, don't be. I went for them first, but they were already dead because they weren't wearing power armor. And he's just like, oh, okay, too fast for Superman then. So he then goes off on a tear about how saving him is good for the economy, but because of the 2 people who died, who last issue I think I said one of them was General Sam Lane. It wasn't. It was General Ahmad, who is trying to get peace in Kahndaq. He ended up being killed, and Lex Luthor's like, oh, that's going to cause oil prices to go up this much %. And then the other one is a music star named Glory Meow, who she brought a voice to all the misfits, and now that she's dead, all these people are going to not have any hope in the world or anything like that. And Lex is like, yep, no, this is going to cripple huge swaths of the economy, even if I haven't died. So get the hell out of here, Superman. You're a nuisance. So Superman then goes off to the Kahndaq place where the peace talks were going on. He decides to unilaterally institute the peace treaty that was about to be signed by blowing up a bunch of tanks on his own. Not a single tank more, but just the tanks that were supposed to be decommissioned. And then he goes to a vigil for the singer, and it turns out that both of these people were saved by Superman in the past. The general was from a air assault bombing last year, whereas the singer used to go by the name Felicity Reagan, and she was going to jump off a building, but Superman stayed and talked to her, and she decided to give things a second chance. And so they're having a candlelight vigil for her. We see Superman then arrives back in Metropolis, where Batman's sitting there just like, hey, yeah, it's quiet around here. Look, don't let him get under your skin. We don't have any traces as to what to do now, so like he just hits and vanishes. Maybe it's a supernatural thing. And Superman's like, yeah, I'm thinking it's psychic. Batman suggests Brainiac. He's like, nah, he's stuck in a black hole. I took care of him. There's one other guy I have an idea, though. So they go to a Star Labs containment under the North Atlantic Ocean, and they meet up with the Dr. Kapoor. And she's like, look, this is my facility. You don't have any call here. I'm the director. And my daughter was really into that singer. And when the singer died, she stopped taking her medication. And Superman's like, ah, crap. And she's like, but then she saw like the good you were doing and the fact that you went to the vigil, and so she put up a Superman thing. She's become a real big fan of you, Superman. And Superman's like, ah, crap. Now she's even more marked for death. So either way, the doctor says, yeah, all right, come with me. Keep these headpieces on. They will stop you from being attacked by, and we go into the next room, Hector Hammond, who's being held down here. And Batman, just by walking in the room, he's already got nosebleeds. And Superman's like, is this an attack? Is he attacking Batman? It's like, nah, it's just normal for being around him. So Hector Hammond comes in and he's like, you want me to be a Hannibal Lecter, huh? Because it ain't me. I'm not the one doing it, but I'll definitely help you find the person. But all I ask for in return is a memory. And Superman's like, all right, I'll do it. And Batman's like, no way, man. If he takes control of your mind, we are dead. Like, all of us are dead. I can be put down, and also I have the training to deal with this sort of thing. And I think it's Kapoor who's like, what training do you have? And he's like, I'm Batman. Actual quote. So Hector Hammond gets into his mind, pulls out a memory of the Joker, and Superman's like, all right, you got your memory, so what's up? And Hector's like, very curious memory. It's also a message. You have your own version of the Joker now, don't you? Well, all right, let's go ahead and check about all the people who are sociopaths and psychopaths who would kill anybody they would cross if they thought they could get away with it on Earth. And it's like 4% of the Earth's population just lights up on this little globe. And Superman's like, that seems like a lot. And Batman and Kapoor are like, nah, that's about right. So then they narrow it down to the intelligence and ability to do the things that they've seen. And Hector says, well, that means there's just one. And that one is currently in Metropolis right now. And Superman's like, I knew it was Lex. And he's like, no, it's not Luthor. It's this other guy. And we cut to Metropolis where we meet Lobo. Lobo's here, and he's on top of a building across from where Lex got shot down. He's being approached by police who tell him to set down his weapon. He's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So he starts getting fired at, and he's like, all right, well, if that's the way you want to do it. He's about to shoot the police back, but then Superman comes and just knocks him out into the ocean. So we then see him firing off some bullets at Superman. Turns out they're smart bullets, so they just track onto him. And it's like, all right, these seem to be pretty close to the things that we had before. It seems like this may be our guy. So Superman manages to swoop around and make the bullets come and explode on Lobo as well as him. And he's like, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm set. But he's got Lobo in his grips. And Lobo tries headbutting Superman, and he's just like, yeah, it's not going to work. And he gets heat visioned in return. And Superman's like, why'd you do it, man? Why are you killing people close to me? And he's like, what? Nah, that ain't me. I didn't do that. And Superman just bellows at him, don't lie to me, not even in a speech bubble. And he's like, oh, it wasn't me, Superman, I swear. And Batman's like, Superman, I did an analysis on the bullets. They're strong bullets, don't get me wrong, but they're not quite as strong as what we would need, and they're leaving a lot of residue behind. It's not the same guy. And Superman's like, why were you on that rooftop? He's like, I was looking for the one who shot Luthor. That weapon seems really, really cool, and I'd like to get my hands on it. And Superman's like, all right, you're an assassin. And Lobo's like, I mean, are you looking for one? And he's like, get off my planet. And he's like, make me. And so Superman just throws him out into orbit. So at that point, Superman is above Earth. He's looking down at it, and in comes the voice again saying, oh, Superman, you're trying so hard to find out who I am, but take a look at that planet. Everyone down there who loves you. It's going to be so fun to see who I'm going to burn next. So at that point, Superman's just scouring the globe looking for anybody. Batman is talking to somebody, though. And Batman's like, yeah, look, Steel and Lana, they're safe. They're wearing Steel's armor. Hero is safe. He's in his own armor being watched by Wonder Woman. Supergirl and Crypto are watching the Daily Planet. They'll be fine as well. Everybody's safe, but because everybody's safe, it's hard to know where this guy's going to strike. We need some bait, and that's where you come in, Lois Lane. So Lois is going to be some bait for whoever's actually doing this. Also, I'm like 90% sure this picks up from issue number 3 of Lobo. I think that they specifically said something that would have led into this. I don't know whether that's going to actually continue over in issue 4 of Lobo, but we'll see. Regardless, I like it. I really like the premise of this last issue, and I still like it now. I like the idea that there is someone who's just that maniacal and pissed off at Superman, and he's powerful enough to actually give Superman a run for his money. So I like seeing Superman put through the paces here, and Batman basically trying to hold him back and be like, bro, I know how to deal with this. You got to listen to me a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all comes out. But all in all, I'd give this one, I think I'm going to give it an 8. And I'm mostly going to give it an 8 for the panel where Superman just loses his crap on Lobo and just shouts him down into the ocean. Like, it's a very powerful panel. So top marks. Batwoman number 37, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Georges Jeanty. So last issue, the demon Etrigan showed up in Jason Blood's apartment, and they seem surprised to see each other. It's jumping around in time a little bit here, but we open up like 15 minutes ahead of time where Batwoman is in the apartment saying, Etrigan, step away from the naked man. And then we cut back 15 minutes where we see Alexandra, who I think was the one who was trying to hire someone to kill Natalia, and it didn't work out. She sees her in the newspaper, and then in her bedroom, Batwoman is standing there, and she's got her vampire thing going on, and she's like, hey, you're going to stop coming after Natalia, or I'm going to kill you. And then all of a sudden, there's a loud boom across the street, and so she goes off to deal with that, and she snaps out of her vampire business. So we see Etrigan is attacking Jason Blood, and Etrigan's basically saying, like, I'm not going back in you, man. We're not fusing back together. I refuse to do it. And of course, he's doing it all in rhyme. And Etrigan's like, I don't know what, or sorry, not Etrigan. Jason's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen you before. Was it? And Etrigan's like, okay, well, I don't believe you, but if I were to believe you, it would still be advantageous for me to kill you so that we can't be fused back together. And as he's about to kill him, that's when Batwoman comes in and says, step away from him. So she uses a batarang on a cord to pull Jason away, and Etrigan just screams and going roar. We then cut to a place called Rags and Tatters, where a bunch of people have broken in, and it looks like they're going to rob the place. And upstairs, we see Rory Regan is being awoken by some sort of ethereal voice. And as the thieves are breaking into the safe, we see the medallion that was pawned off at the beginning of last issue from the cult thing is being retrieved. And Rory comes down, he's like, hey, stop. And as the thieves run off, he says, well, I'm going to need my uniform if I'm going to work. And all these rags start forming around him. We'll get to it. So we see Etrigan has tackled Batwoman out a window. They crash down to the ground. And she's immediately just fed up with the rhyming. She's just immediately just like, hey, your rhymes are strained. Like, stop doing that. But he keeps on going at it. She throws some batarangs at him. And she says, like, look, tell me what you have to do with the monks in the brown robes. Like, what's going on there? And he's like, whoa, hold on. Did you say monks in brown robes? Like, I got if they are responsible for, like, me being around, they got a plan and we need to stop it. Like, I need to be able to stop that. And she's like, what? What's going to happen? And he's like, they're going to enslave the human race. And she's like, oh, that's like Tuesday for me. Whatever. So at that point, he reveals that they're trying to resummon Morgan Le Fay of Arthurian legend, and she will be the doom of all of us if they're successful. So Batwoman's like, can you find them? Please don't answer in rhyme, just nod. And he's like, uh-huh. And she's like, all right, cool, let's go stop a resurrection. So we then go down to the Gotham rail yard where turns out Clayface, after the destruction of Arkham, is just trying to bail. He just wants to get out of town, start anew. But there are cops everywhere. They're all keeping track of things. So He's forced to leave. He sneaks out through the sewer grate, and there are some guys from this cult there. And they are sitting there, and they see Clayface come out, and it's just like, oh, hey, perfect. So they open up the door just like, oh, Mr. Carlo, hey, we're able to help you get out of town if you want. Get in the van. And so Clayface, being an idiot, gets in the van. He's immediately frozen and stunned, so he's unable to do anything. And the thieves are now en route. We then cut to the Kane estate, where Alice, aka Beth, I don't know what name she's going by now, is walking the halls, and she's like, oh, so many memories here. I think it's time to make some new memories. So then we cut back to Etrigan and Batwoman, and I love it because Etrigan just like sniffs Batwoman. It's just like, you got vampire on you. And then like the soul of Natalia just like comes out of Kate, and we see Natalia just like, oh god, something just broke my link to Batwoman. That's weird. And Batwoman's like, what the hell was that? And he's like, don't worry about it. Hey, there are the guys who we need to chase down. So we follow the vans as they're going down the street. Etrigan and Batwoman are giving chase. But we see that they manage to arrive at this building. They say, hey, sorry we're late, but we're here. On the rooftop opposite, we see, it's Ragman. It's Ragman. He's there. He's ready to strike in, but he doesn't know what's happening yet, so he holds off. We see Clayface gets loaded into the building. They embed the medallion into his chest as he starts to defrost. All the people in the room start chanting with these weird runes, and then the medallion activates, and exploding from Clayface is Morgan Le Fay. All right. Sure. It's a fun issue. I'm not going to say it's not. I think her Batwoman being immediately fed up with Etrigan, and then Etrigan just being like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm in if we're doing this other thing here. It's fun. I think, we're going to get the Ragman introduction more so next issue, but I think Clayface's introduction here was good. Whatever the hell's going on with Alice, we need to speed that up a bit, but it's not a bad issue. I don't really have much problem with it. The only thing that I'm going to critique majorly is the fact of we spent those brief little moments of Kate being under the thrall of Natalia, and then Etrigan's just like, you got vampire on you, and then it's just gone. Like, I hope we come back to that, because that is way too easy of a fix. So yeah, it's what it is. It's all right. I'm going to give it I'll give it just a flat 7. I don't think it needs anything higher than that. Catwoman number 37, written by Genevieve Valentine, art by Garry Brown. So, last issue, the end of it was that Nick Calabrese got caught snitching to the police by Black Mask, and things are not going well. This issue picks up outside of the townhouse, pouring down rain, and Nick's sister Antonia finds him beaten and bloodied with a note pinned to him saying, you might want to seal your leak. So we then cut over to the Egyptian, which is a club that apparently Catwoman now owns. I shouldn't say Catwoman, Selina now owns. And as she walks the floor, she meets up with Mr. Mason, who is the guy who's working with Black Mask. And they share some quote-unquote pleasantries while she's basically saying like, oh, I hear you've been very busy recently. And he's like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of work that needs doing. And they basically share this little silent conversation here where Mason basically says like, hey, he doesn't have a public profile right now, but the guy I'm helping out with, he's very interested in the kind of power that you've got in your family. So at that point, Mason walks off, and Catwoman's like, okay, he already did whatever it is he was going to do. He was way too confident. I just got to deal with whatever the fallout is. And of course, she immediately finds out about Nick. So Selina storms back into her home. Immediately, the rest of the Calabrese family's there. And she's like, I don't want to hear it. Where is he? So they go upstairs. It's Ward and Selina. And Antonia's standing there at the door with a gun. She's not letting anyone in to see her brother. But Catwoman's like, hey, I just want to talk to him. Like, just talk. I promise you that's it. And she's like, hey, I know he screwed up. He did. But like this isn't because of you. This isn't because you're the boss or anything. This is just something he's done before. And she's like, I know. I just want to talk. So Antonia leaves the room, and it's just Selina and Nick. And he's like, I didn't talk. I mean, I talked to the police, sure. But when Black Mask got me, I didn't say a word to him. And she's like, okay, cool. But tell me everything that happened. So we then cut over to Black Mask, who's talking to the head of the, I can never remember, the Hasegawa family. And the head of the Hasegawa was just like, oh, well, it's crazy that the Calabrisis have a leak. Like, it's bad for business if they have that. So we're going to go ahead and try to keep our deal with them with the drug running and gun running and all that stuff. And if that works out, then great. If it doesn't, though, Mr. Black Mask, maybe you and I can have a deal. And he's like, perfect, sounds great, I love it. So as Black Mask leaves, the younger Hasegawa, the daughter, is like, don't do that. Why would you do that? And he's like, because their family has a mole. I got to keep my options open. And he basically says, look, you're going to go find out, talk to Selena, see what she does. If she lies, just see through it. Like, do what you got to do. Everyone's going to be watching to see how she handles this. This is her first real test as head of the family. And we see her come back down and talk to the rest of the Calabrisis, and they're like, the other families are going to be pissed. We're pissed. This is unacceptable. He's ruined the family name. And Selena just gets up and says, like, I'm head of the family. If you don't like that, so be it, but I will deal with this, okay? I am going to fix this. And they say how, and she just walks back upstairs silently. So at that point, Alexandria gets into the room, Antonia, that's her name. And she's like, I don't suppose we can put this up for a vote? And she's like, no, you know what has to happen now. I think he would want it to be you, though. So I'm going to let you do this however you can. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll be back after dark. So Selena's obviously not happy about this, but she doesn't want there to be any questions about it. She needs this to be absolutely dealt with. And she sees this as the cost. She sees this as the price. She hates it so much, but she needs to. So Ward congratulates her, saying, like, you're doing this well, you're doing the right thing. And he's like, yeah, tell Nick that. So she walks out, and we see her speaking to the family and saying, all right, this is what's going to happen. Nick Calabrese will be silenced for what he did. Apparently he gave info to the police, but luckily it was just about the gun operation they planned. So all we're going to do is just move it up sooner so that they're not going to have time to get set for it. That's all it's going to be. And all of our own houses are going to be dealt with so that there's nothing left of this trail. Everything's going to be cleared up. And I think it's Aika is her name. Aiko, the Hasegawa daughter, is there, and she's going to finalize the details to make sure this deal goes through. And you see she just looks so disappointed in Selena for making this happen. So we get them separated alone, and she's just like, all right, so what's the plan? Are you going to go after him? We got our suits here. We can go and do a thing. And she's like, no, we're not. And he's like, oh, what are you going to do then? She's like, I'm not going to do anything. I've already done what I'm going to do. This is going to happen. And Aiko was just like, this is awful. You're just going to let him die. It's like, no. He's going to die, but I am going to make Black Mask pay. So we see that the siblings go up to an old cabin where apparently they spent a bunch of years in their childhood, and they reminisce about how Nick at one point like almost drowned because he was going out trying to get like a pair of glasses that were out in the water or something. And he's just like, all right, look, it's getting late. I don't want you driving late at night. So she's crying. She stands up, pulls out a gun, and ends up shooting him. And you see the blam panel. And as she brings back a blood-covered sweatshirt and says, the boys carried him back. They carried the body back. It's done. And Selena says, I'm sorry. And she's like, I don't care. She just walks off. So Selena goes out to her balcony. She sees Aiko on the other side, just wearing the Catwoman suit, and she's like, I kind of wish someone would come over here and beat the crap out of me. Like, that's what I'm feeling right now. But she calls in Ward, and she's like, hey, we're going to go make a social call. Let's go. And they head back out on the town. We see Black Mask is talking with Mason, and they're surprised that Selena went through with it. They're surprised that she actually managed to do it, but it's still working to their advantage because this is basically just putting her through emotional turmoil. So eventually they're going to manage to get in a position where Hasegawa is going to work for them regardless. And we see what Catwoman's idea here is that she storms into the police department, talks to Detective Alvarez, and says, oh, hey, she's a bit beaten up because of her fight with Catwoman, and says, yeah, Catwoman got to me. I couldn't wait to see you tonight. And she walks up to Alvarez and says, Nick's canceled his appointments. You'll have to do better. And then kisses Alvarez and storms off and tells him good luck with the investigation. So basically giving him the hint saying, hey, if you want to stop this, you're going to have to do something because Nick is off the table. Like, he's dead now. So she leaves the building. Ward's waiting for her and just says, hey, we should go. And she's like, no, later. This whole issue, there's been this overarching thing of her just wanting to disappear, to get away from all of this. And we see her walk into the crowd of people down the street, and she just blends right in and disappears into the crowd. So that's the issue. It's solid. It's a nice, solid issue. I like the fact that Selina is having to make these hard choices, and they don't treat her just 100% heroic. She has to come down on this because it is far more utilitarian for her to try to keep the peace rather than lose it all just to defend the one guy who messed up. So it's interesting character stuff. I think the annual, which is coming out in a few weeks, is going to add on top of this, and we'll start to see the slow little breakdown here of how the family dynamics really work out. So I think I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a 7.5. And the only reason it's not getting the 8 there is the only reason I was able to get any of the names in this issue is because I went back to find them. And that's why I'm so unsure if it was Aiko. I'm not positive on that one, but it's a bit of a problem, the fact that we are introducing so many new characters and they just never name them. They never say what the names are. It's very annoying, but that's a tiny nitpick for the larger story at whole. So 7.5. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 37, written by Scott Lobdell, art by R.B. Silva. Last issue, Roy Harper woke up from his burn ward coma, and this issue is just another origin story for Roy Harper. Here's the thing, though. It actively goes against things that have been established as his origin, so whatever. So we open up, apparently he was a wonder kid, and he was a 10-year-old boy genius. And he went to a national science fair, and we see that his dad was just so uninterested in the things he was doing, but like he was still there. He showed up at the very least. And as he is being approached by the judges, he has this bowl of jacks, like, you know, the metal plate with the ball and all that. And he throws them up in the air and says, oh, it's a short-ranged electromagnetic pulse, or cheating. And as he throws it up in the air, it sends an electrical thing to all of the other kids' displays here at the science fair and takes them all offline. And he says, oh, I never really cared about being the smartest or the most successful. I just wanted to be seen. I just wanted to be noticed. So he gets chastised for that by all the judges, but this dad's like, that's my boy. So we then cut back into the hospital room, and he's talking to Oliver. And he's like, oh, yeah, you know, I just want to make sure we're okay. That's the only reason I showed up here. And he's like, oh, well, I think I'm glad you did. And he's like, yeah, I might be lying, or maybe I'm not. I don't know. I'm conflicted about Oliver. And we cut back to him meeting Oliver. It was like a tech show when they were unveiling the Q-Pad. And he's like, a lot of people ask me how I got successful. And they're trying to figure it out for themselves. And I say, you can't. You can't be successful. Not like me. It just can't happen. And one of the guys chimes in just like, Mr. Queen, what do you say to your critics? And Oliver just double flips him the bird and says, that's what I say. So everyone else hates him, but immediately Roy is smitten. He's like, oh God, this guy's the coolest. So back in the present, Roy's trying to get up and get out of bed. Oliver's trying to slow him down. One of his bones literally just snaps as he tries to walk. And he's like, see, you need to at least sit down for a while. And Roy's just like, no, look, I don't work for you. You're not the boss of me. And we then see him going to get ready anyway. But we cut to apparently some other point in the past after that tech show. Roy got arrested, put in the drunk tank, and Oliver not only bails him out, but also calls up the governor to clear out his entire record. Like, he's totally wiped clean. And Roy's just like, well, I can't pay you back for bail, so thanks, I guess. And he's like, oh, here's the thing, Roy. You're working for me now. Hop on in. And he brings Roy to Queen Industries, and he's like, look, I've been looking for super smart kids. From what I hear, you're one of the smartest. Here's your lab. You can do whatever you want in here. Hire people, fire people, work by yourself. I don't care. All I want you to do is build me incredible things, and I get to hold the patent on them. Okay? Cool? Great. And Roy's like, awesome. I love it. Because it felt like he was being seen. That's what he wanted. He wanted to be noticed. So immediately he starts working on all this crazy stuff, and Oliver's like, all right, looking good, doing great. We then see there was a boat trip at one point. That's where he likes spending the most amount of time out on the water. And he's just throwing back beers like nobody's business. And him and Oliver bond over their respective daddy issues. And Oliver's like, but right now you're happy? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm never happier. So another 6 months pass, and Oliver brings him up to a penthouse party where he drunkenly starts hitting on some other guy's wife. And luckily he manages to get out of it because they start taking fire. Something about Queen Industries being attacked by a supervillain. Oliver tells everyone to get to safety as he goes down into his like aero bunker and starts getting his gear on. Roy, however, notices and follows him in, saying, Oliver, hey, what are you doing, man? And he's like, I'm not Oliver. Okay, yes, I'm Oliver. Can we talk about this later? And so he goes out to fight the fight. We then see they avoid each other for like a week. He goes off gallivanting, doing Green Arrow stuff. And when Oliver finally comes back, he's like, hey, man, you can't hide out in your lab. You know, it's not healthy. Now stop acting like a butthead. And Roy just starts throwing stuff at him, being like, you don't own me. You never let me in. This was never a partnership or whatever. And Oliver's just like, hey, man, I was thinking about letting you in. And seriously, I was like just on the verge of doing things. Like I was just going to do it. But like at the same time, I'm also your boss. So like, let's cool the jets here a little bit. And he's like, you're not, I'm my own boss. You just sign my checks. And he's like, okay, look, you've been drinking. We just need to calm down a little bit. You want to be brought into things more? I'll bring you in. And he's like, no. I've looked through the stuff and the things. And before I came in to help you out here, all of your arrows were just like boxing glove arrows. You didn't want me. You wanted my arsenal. Get it? So at that point, him and Oliver start getting in a fight. He throws the first punch, and Oliver's like, look, you're the one who keeps on holding back your own life. You're the one who can't like live up to this. That's the whole reason you're such a loser. And he just literally kicks Roy while he's down. And we see him say like, all right, get out, leave everything, you're fired. And he's like, yeah, gladly. But here's the thing. I can stop drinking whenever I want, but you're always going to be a dick. So he runs out and he says like, oh yeah, of course he was listening, but I don't know if he really heard me. And we see back in the modern day, Arsenal's gotten all of his outfit back on, and Oliver's basically telling him like, hey, look, I'd insist on coming with you, but we've been down this road, it's probably not the best thing. And Roy's like, hey, do you know anything about making amends? It's a whole thing in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's trying to, patch things up with people who you caused chaos in their lives and stuff. But I never did that with you. And you know why? It's because a part of me doesn't want to forget. A part of me, I want to keep that wound open so I can keep on getting better beyond it, like in spite of it. And Oliver's like, okay, well, the fire destroyed your bow, so here's another one. We made it exactly to your specs because, again, I own the patent on it. And he's like, man, you always have that last little line. It's always the worst. All right, thank you. Goodbye. And so he leaps out the window, and he's like, yeah, real life is dumb. Sometimes it doesn't always end in a happy fairy tale ending or whatever. But right now, I'm just going to go out there and help my friends one day at a time. That's the issue. This explicitly and directly says that Roy never actually teamed up with Green Arrow, which in the Green Arrow book explicitly says that he did for quite some time. So I'm calling that this isn't canon. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to say it didn't happen because it's Scott Lobdell's version, and I'm pretty sure we've decanonized a lot of his stuff. It's a boring issue. That's really all there is. It feels like it's just padding for the sake of, we have heard we're getting canceled at issue 40, so we're just going to stop. Like, we're just going to, we're going to pad out this arc to get us to 40, and then that's it. So, yeah, I don't know. It feels lame. I'd say it's like 5. Like, it's nothing. It's not even bad. It's not like an awful issue. It's just nothing to it. So, yeah, it's not great. Let's see what more horrors we can get up to in the next issue. Supergirl number 37, written by Kate Perkins and Mike Johnson, art by Emanuela Lupacchino. So last issue, Supergirl got inducted into a space school called the Crucible, where it teaches her how to be a superhero. Also, Superboy is in a monastery. So we open up this issue, and it's Supergirl basically being like, I never got to finish school, mainly because, my planet got destroyed. But this school seems pretty interesting. But do I really belong here? Because all of these people were super because, they're the best of their species. I'm a normal Kryptonian who's just strong because of the yellow sun. I'm not sure if, I'm really the best here. Also, these are all protectors of their homeworld, and I guess I'm now Earth's designate of a protector, but, I don't feel like I'm from Earth. I still feel like I'm Kryptonian. So she reintroduces us real quick to her little group of friends. Maxima, who is smart but cold. Savo, who's a cat man, very physical. And Comet, who is the bad boy and has some sort of psychic powers. And we see, just a little bit of them getting along with each other. They make some light banter at each other, and all the girls are swooning over Comet. And Maxima storms off like, "Ugh, let's go. Please tell me that all the boys on your planet aren't like that." And she's like, I only really know one of them, and he's a nice guy, but what about your planet? And she's like, "Oh, I wouldn't know. Anyway, let's go. We're going to be late for class." And the class is, as far as I could tell, it's called tactical class, but it just seems like a history class. And we get the professor, who, we get his name in a minute, is talking about this planet that was destroyed and its for its resources. And Maxima chimes in saying oh, well, the indigenous people did as they were asked, but then they were betrayed when they were told to go to another planet. And the professor, named Corstus, is that's not what's written in the official books. Where are you getting that information? And she's like, my mother was on there sending an aid mission, and she saw it happen. And he's like, well, then why isn't it in the records then, huh? So at that point, Supergirl chimes in, just being like, hey, I like what she said. I believe her. And it's like, oh, why do you believe her? And just well, it's just, it's what she said was right. It sounds like that was imprisonment. It's not a negotiation. It's a punishment. And he's just like, look, the thing that you're going to need to do, the thing you're going to need is to find out all the information as accurately as possible before you make your decisions, all right? So I invite Maxima's mother to come here and inform us of what actually happened, but until then, we're going along with what's in the books. So at that point, Supergirl says, oh, it was nice to be back at school. It feels like I'm normal here. I'm not the super person in a normal crowd. All of these people are super. So she's learning about all the worlds in the universe and all that stuff. And eventually she gets into a sparring class with Comet. And apparently the entire thing is just go get the golden snitch. It's just up there in the sky, go grab it. And Supergirl just flies up, goes to grab it, when all of a sudden the Red Lantern version of herself attacks her. And she's like, what? That's another me? Oh god, are we doing clones? Ah, crap. And another version comes out and attacks her, and Comet just flies up and grabs the golden snitch. It's just like, nah, I just made psychic projections from inside your consciousness. I thought it would slow you down. Better luck next time, though. And she's like, okay, he's not just a pretty face. He's got something behind him, so be it. So we then see another class with Savo and Supergirl where they have to dismantle a bomb before it goes off, and they have 90 seconds and you can't x-ray it either. And Savo's like, oh, that'll be easy. I already smell where the bomb is. And the person running the class is like, oh yeah, all right, well, here's a robot army you got to fight too. So Supergirl's taking out the robot army while Savo's going after the bomb. But ultimately, he hesitates. He doesn't know which wire to cut. And as the clock is ticking down, Supergirl has to leave the robot army, and she's like, oh, I get it. This is, leadership not in the sense of, we're all leaders. It's also when you can recognize when you need to help other people and step up. Okay, so she comes in with her heat vision. She blows it up. Savo's like, no, I almost had it. I had still 10 seconds. God. So at that point, we then see the preceptor and Corstus are, and it's Amata is the preceptor's name. They're going to talk to the high council of the school, and apparently these two don't get along with each other. And as they go into the high council, Corstus basically is saying, hey, I've got a plan. Look, we send out our students into this very dangerous area. I'm thinking we clone. Let's clone the students, and then we can have an entire, safe army, like where we don't have to risk the originals. And Amada's just like, we are a school, man. We are not an army. We are not supposed to be like doing troops and whatnot. But the High Council's like, look, Green Lantern books are currently doing an event right now where they're fighting with the New Gods. Police force of the universe is a little bit cut thin right now. We're going to go with Corsus's plan. But Amada, since you're so against it, you're going to be the one in charge to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. And she's like, all right, fine, whatever. I hate this. So we then cut to elsewhere where Maxima is throwing daggers into like target practice or whatever. And Kara comes to visit and just like, hey, all of the other people have left and gone to be with their families. Why are you still here? And she's like, oh, I don't really go to see my family because they don't like that I'm doing superhero stuff here. And she's like, oh, well, why not? And it's like, oh, well, on my planet, I'm supposed to just be a breeder. Like, I'm just supposed to increase the population. I'm supposed to get married and find a mate and have kids because my population is at critically low levels. But I don't want to do that. But, you know, it's a culture thing. It's just the way things are sometimes. And Kara's like, oh, I don't know what to say to that. And she's like, don't say anything. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So later on, Kara's in a room. Sabo comes in just like, hey, wow, this place looks nifty. Is this what Krypton's like? And she's like, kinda. It's like, yeah, no, I get that. My planet's kinda, or my room's kinda like my planet as well. So he comes in and apologizes for snapping earlier. And as it seems like like they're about to share a tender moment, Amada pops on the hologram and just like, Sabo, something's happening on your homeworld. Take Supergirl and your other two friends, and you're all going to go there and you're going to try to save things. And we then cut to inside of Amada's room where apparently they found out that Superboy exists. And they're like, he's almost like Supergirl, but he's also a clone. So he would be useful for this whole cloning thing. But like whenever he gets involved, like we need to make sure Kara is cool with that. Are you sure? Zorthra or whatever, that she's going to be cool. And he's like, oh, I guarantee it. It's being super evil. So we then cut over to Nego, which is Sava's homeworld. And immediately it's all full of cat people. And there's a bunch of rebels coming up in space cars and they want to attack. And Sava's like, oh, they stand no chance against us. Everyone attack them. So everyone launches into a fight. They start attacking. And Sabo gets one and says, tell me where Rojo is. And it's like, oh, well, he's tending to the rest of your family. Ha ha ha. And he points towards the Citadel. So they make their way up into the place. Sabo finds his mother is down on the ground and is like bleeding out. And Sabo's like, oh no, Mom. And she's like, oh, Sabo, your brother. And then we hear a voice off screen who's super menacing saying like, well, only a matter of time. You've been busy since I've been gone, Sabo. Or should I say, little brother. Turns out Savo's older brother is about to kill his father, got a knife to his throat and says, oh, you brought your school friends with you. I've got my own friends too. And we see he's got his own little gang, but all of us were deemed too unstable for the Crucible. So now I'm going to tear this planet apart and take out the Crucible next. So yeah, there's some backstory for you. Catman's got a messed up family. I shouldn't say Catman. That's actually a real DC person. Sabo. Anyway, it's okay. I don't know. I get the vibe we're going for here. This thing of like, oh, the Crucible is going to teach you how to control your powers. And we're just taking Kara and putting her in a new location, but someplace she can feel more comfortable, because that's always been a back and forth with her is, does she feel comfortable in any of these locations? She's looking for a home. How can she develop friendships and such? That's just her character. That's what she does. But once you add in the Superboy stuff, it changes what the plot is. It makes it now this entirely separate thing. And honestly, he's only been in like 2 pages of this, but he feels like he is going to become the central thrust of the story moving forward here. And I'm not sure if I like that part. So as for what we've seen so far, I probably would give this a 7. It's not anything amazing. It still feels like the same kind of Supergirl story we've been getting. If anything, a little bit less creative than the Red Lantern stuff, because at least that felt like it was interconnecting the universe a bit more, rather than here's a random school that just happened to always be here, but we never ever talked about it. We opened up this arc with her being a barista. That's so much more interesting because it forces her to be on the ground and interacting with other people that we may or may not know. This is just, here's space school. It's Hogwarts, but in space. Like, all right, sure. Yeah, I'm going to say this is a 7. I already said that, but it's just, I can't quite pin down where the plot is going with it or what this final message is going to be, but I hope it's something more than, and I feel like I finally belong, / I don't belong anywhere. Justice League number 37, written by Geoff Johns, art by Jason Fabok. So last issue, Superman and Batman ran across Patient Zero, and he is a big boy. So this issue picks up with everyone panicking, running through an airport, seemingly dying. It seems like this was earlier on in the timeline of things. And we come across this one woman who medical professionals are saying, oh, I heard her. She was screaming for help in my head. And it turns out that her latent ability with the Amazovirus was telepathy. So at this point, Batman's narration is over top saying, like, smallpox is still a thing, technically. Like, there's 2 vials of it that are still around, and it's kept in secure locations. And LexCorp was thought to be a secure location. But, like, is it, though? So we cut back to Superman and Batman as they're facing down Patient Zero. Superman uses his vision to see that he has a LexCorp badge that says Dr. Armin Icarus, and he must have been one of the closest ones when the virus went live. So they are saying, okay, we need to get a blood sample. Superman tries talking him down, saying, hey, we're the Justice League. And he's broken speech. He's like, you are humans. And he's like, yeah, totally. So at that point, Batman's like, hey, his pupils are dilating. He's not cognizant. I've got all that from the Hazbat uniform. And Superman's like, did you just call your suit the Hazbat uniform? And he's like, it was Robin's idea. So at that point, Patient Zero recognizes that Superman has heat vision, and he manages to mutate his own eyes to also have heat vision. And he blasts them both through a wall. They're both okay. They manage to get through it. Batman says, you know, his suit is designed to withstand all of Superman's powers, so this should be fine as well. And then Patient Zero says, you can fly, and he yelps out and he sprouts wings himself, and Batman's like, okay, now he has wings. That's crazy. So he saw that you had heat vision, he copied heat vision. He saw that you could fly, he's copying flight. He's doing the things that the Amazo android can do of copying powers, but organically. He's evolving, and he's already gone. He's already flew away. So at that point, it's like the virus is still in the air, it's still alive and mutating. Superman can literally see it, and he's like, I always thought that Lex Luthor was a threat to the world, but I didn't think he would actually destroy it. So then we cut over to Lex Luthor, who's talking to his sister Lena, and he's like, look, Lena, people want to kill me because I've done some bad things. And like that guy who was sent to kill me, Neutron, his powers got shut down, but the radioactivity stayed inside his body. So he is currently like dying of mass radiation inside of himself. He is dying like super quick. So is the entire Justice League. And Lena asks, like, why would you make something so terrible? And Lex pauses for a moment and he says, metahuman criminals kill dozens or hundreds of people every year. No prison can hold them. Studies say that they on average get out within 3 months. And I wanted to find a way to neutralize these horrific people so that way normal people would be fine. It was just supposed to temporarily suppress them. And Lena calls him out saying, like, I remember when you used to sneak out of the house to go to science fairs and you always had to lie to Dad. You're lying to me now. Tell me the truth. Why did you really create this? And he just kisses her on the forehead and says, it's not important. Right now, what's important is that I can make a cure. So we see that Superman and Batman have traced Patient Zero back to LexCorp. And it's like, I don't know, maybe he's coming here because it's familiar. Maybe that's the only thing he can remember. Who knows? So Superman thinks that Lex might have done this on purpose, but Batman's like, no, he wouldn't put his sister at risk like this. And Superman's like, are you sure, man? You don't know Luthor like I do. And at that point, Patient Zero jumps out, starts attacking them, but Wonder Woman jumps in, puts a lasso around his neck and says, all right, I'm going to fight you, I'm going to take you down, but in the meantime, you're going to answer my questions. How did you get sick? And he says, I'm not sick. We are not sick. Speaking to her as he blasts her with heat vision. We then see Captain Cold and Lex walking through the sick bay, looking at all the Justice League, and he's like, yeah, well, we need Patient Zero or else, like, we're not going to be able to save them. And Captain Cold's like, you're worried about the Justice League? It's like, yeah, if they have a virus that is designed to kill them. It never was intended to do this. And Captain Cold's like, yeah, so what was it for? And Lex just puts him up against the wall being like, don't pester me, man. I'm going through enough. People are afraid, and they should be. There's stuff you have no idea about out there. And then all of a sudden, there's a big explosion. Guy comes out of the cloud saying his name's Bullet. He got hired to kill Lex because Neutron failed, and he's here to take the bounty. So Superman and Wonder Woman are fighting against Patient Zero. They tackle him to the ground. Batman comes up with a blood extractor. He's like, all right, got it. We're good. Let's go. But then Patient Zero manages to snap his head around, fires his heat vision, and blasts Batman against the wall. The syringe breaks, and Batman turns to face Superman and Wonder Woman. They're like, Batman, you cool? And he's like, no, I've been exposed. And you see his front, the glass mask he was wearing is broken open. And now he's got the Amazovirus. Simultaneously, Lex Luthor seemingly gets shot in the head by Bullet. I doubt either of those things. Well, no, Batman being exposed, I can see happening. Bullet part, not so much. So, yeah, it's a very quick read. It's a lot of action, double-page spreads, but it's solid. I like this. There's a little bit of narration on the first page that I didn't mention, which is the Justice League was not built for something like this. It's built to take out armadas. It's built to take out superpowered freaks. It's not built to take into account, like, the breakdown of society from an extremely small virus. It's not something that can handle that. So I like it. I think it's a solid issue. I'm going to give this one it's probably worth a 7.5, but the Jason Fabok art immediately bumps it up to an 8. I love the way he draws like every single character. Fantastic. Wonder Woman number 37, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. So last issue, Wonder Woman was struggling to handle being Wonder Woman and the God of War and all this extra stuff. And then she came to Themyscira and found out that her mother's statue has been crumbled into dust. So we pick up with the Amazons as they're fighting against what I can only assume are some mechanical giant eagles as they storm out of the sky screeching, and they just start fighting against them with swords and stuff. They might not be mechanical, they just seem really mechanical. And everyone's like, oh, has anyone seen the Queen? And it's like, God knows when she's ever going to show up again. So then we cut to somewhere on Themyscira where a sorceress and that old lady from last issue who does get a name in this issue, it's Derinoe. So she's got her own daughter here who is carrying a baby. And it's like everything that you need, sorceress is here. And sorceress says, give the child to me. And the daughter's like, please, mother, isn't there anything we can do? And the Derinoe is just like, she's left us no choice. So the sorceress takes hold of the baby. The sorceress picks up a giant dagger and says the price must be paid and stabs down with a splash of blood. We then cut over to Diana, who is sparring with Clark, and he's like, hey, mate, we should talk about this. And she's like, what? Talk about what? How I'm kicking your butt today? And he's like, no, I'm serious. Look, I know you're going through some stuff here, but you just lost your mom, like, definitively and sadly. Like, are you sure, like, that's not something you want to talk about? And she's like, nah, I'm fine. And he's like, okay, well, we both know that's a lie. And she's like, okay, you know what? I'm tired. How about we go hit the showers? And he's like, hey, don't shut me out. I just want to talk. And she's like, I killed the God of War, became the God of War. My mother is dead. I almost lost you. And now that I'm the God of War, I'm terrified that I'm losing every other aspect of myself. But you think that this is the breaking point for me? Yeah, I've missed my mother every day for like years now. This is not a time for me to have grief. So we cut back over to the sorceress and we see that she didn't kill the baby. She actually killed the mother. And something has happened, but they reveal that inside of her cauldron is the remaining pieces of Hippolyta, the clay sculpture, as it's boiling into a pot. And then we cut over to a council of the Themyscirans, the Amazons, and they've called Diana forward, and they're basically like, hey, we don't like that you're spending so much time in man's world. You got to make a choice. Are you going to be our queen, or are you going to go out and be that world's protector? Like, you, one way or the other. If you're not going to be our queen, abdicate the throne so that someone here can actually rule us with, like, actually caring about us. And Wonder Woman's like, I can't just walk away. I have responsibility to the people of the Earth and the Justice League and the God of War. And Derinoe, who's on the council, is like, what about us? Like, you longer you refuse to embrace your throne, the more vulnerable we are to enemies. And at that point, more hawks, more eagles start attacking. Wonder Woman sounds the alarm, gets out there, starts fighting. They are mechanical. There's a bunch of gears here. And Wonder Woman's like, what the hell are these things? as they come down and try to attack Darano, and Wonder Woman fights him off. And he's just like, oh, do I look like one of your humans that needs rescuing? It's just like, no, what? Okay, can someone tell me what these things are? And one of them says that they are Stymphalian birds, which are the pets of Ares. And now that Ares is dead, they are programmed to return to Ares' home. And since Wonder Woman considers this her home, they're coming back to the God of War's home. And Wonder Woman's like, I had no idea these things were even a thing. And Darano calls her out, just being like, you are so spread thin. You don't know nothing about nothing, girlfriend. You are literally like too busy playing hero that you know nothing of what is happening to your people. We deserve better than that. And Wonder Woman's like, you're right. They do. And if they're really being attacked by creatures that belong to my mentor, then I will go as God of War to make things right. And then Cyborg comes over the comm saying, hey, another village vanished. We need you. And immediately Darano is like, let me guess. Another problem out in the world of man. And she's like, I promise I'll be right back. I am going to deal with this. And she goes and flies off. And Darano is just like, you gotta live with these consequences, man. So then we cut over to the sorceress who's sitting in a big old creepy throne, and there's a big old creepy dude with very wrong proportions who comes up and says, it is begun, my lady. And they reveal that inside of the cauldron is emerging a new life that they deem Donna Troy, who will take her rightful place among the Amazons, and she will be a traitor amongst them. So New 52 Donna Troy. I can't wait to see how fast this is retconned. I don't actually mind this as an origin. I like the idea that, you know, it's a political thing. The Amazons are so fed up with not being heard, with not being treated fairly, that they're branching out and they're doing something rash, and they're doing something that is going to ultimately blow up in their face, but something that Wonder Woman's going to have to solve. And I think that that's good. That's a good way of showing, like, yeah, she's out of touch with this group, and it's something that she needs to be able to focus on. So it's a solid story arc thus far. I think introducing Donna Troy is kind of just like a, hey, audience, we know that you were kind of really into that Azzarello run, but we got some cool stuff here in this next run now. Check it out. Donna Troy's back. So we'll see how that goes. Overall, I think I'm probably going to give this one, it's a 7.5. I can't tell you exactly why it's not hitting the 8, but I can say that it is a solid read beginning to end, and it's only keeping my interest in the arc. It hasn't lost any along the way. I would say that I would like a bit more characterization to this woman who died and like who this baby was and all this other stuff, but I think that stuff we'll probably get later on. So right now, 7.5. Teen Titans number 5, written by Will Pfeiffer, art by Scott Hepburn. So last issue, Manchester Black, representing Star Labs, says, hey, Red Robin and the Teen Titans, let's partner up. This issue opens up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where a group of preppy kids that seemingly are breaking the rules are up on a roof smoking, and we meet this one girl who, her name is Chris, and she's like, hey, I know last time we tried to score some weed, it ended up being oregano, but this time I got something cool. Straight from a connection at Star Labs. It's called Red K, and it's a bunch of pills that literally give us superpowers. And so they all pop the pills, and they're like, awesome, we're going to be superheroes. And Chris is like, no, not heroes. So then we cut over to the Teen Titans, which are currently just hanging out at Bunker's apartment. And Red Robin's like, okay, so Star Labs wants to work with us. Obviously, this needs to be a team thing. We all need to come to a conclusion. But, like, I think it's good. I think they're doing all right. And he points out how Manchester Black and Star Labs literally fixed his teeth. And obviously, dental's a very nice benefit to have. Also, they have an entire huge laboratory and, like, a place to work out of instead of this tiny apartment. So he's selling it out, and he even points out to Raven, like, Raven, we know you don't like being in the spotlight. This will allow you some privacy. And she's like, actually, I'm kind of branching out a little bit, and I'm finding my people. And he's like, huh, that's weird. But nonetheless, I still think this is a good idea. And Beast Boys there are like, I mean, sounds good to me, and you're the boss, man, so we'll listen to you if that's what you want. And he's like, well, that's the thing. This is a really good offer. It's too good of an offer. I need to see what's going wrong with this. And Beast Boy's like, yeah, that's typical. So Red Robin tells Beast Boy, go into Star Labs, just spy on him for a while, take something that's a little bit less than the Howler Monkey form you're currently in. And he's like, oh, I've got an idea. How about Pediculus Humanus Capitis? And Bunker's like, what the hell is that? Red Robin's like, you don't want to know. Sounds good, get in there. So he storms off to go do that and see what's going on there. But they make the point of saying, well, this does have to be a team vote, and we are still missing one member. Cut over to Cassie, who last issue was dealing with her mom and the fact that there is a horde of women who idolize her. And she's talking to her mom, and the mom's basically like, Cassie, I don't like this superhero thing. Like, what do you suppose? It's not secure. Like, maybe you just had to think about an income and your privacy and stuff. Like, you're not even hiding behind a mask. And she keeps on, like, Cassie keeps trying to interject, and the mom keeps shutting her out. And she's like, also, I'm not thrilled about the company you've been keeping. And she's like, Mom. And they look back and see the horde of women that are still following them. It's like, okay, that one may be fair. That's reasonable. So we cut over to the teens up on the rooftop again. Chris gets fire powers. One of the boys gets lightning powers. Another one gets invisibility powers. And one of them goes Hulk, but like purple and still able to think. And Chris calls out that kid saying like, dude, we all got like cool powers. You just got strong. And he's like, yeah, but I'm like really strong. It's like, we're all like really strong now. You're just like, you got the worst power out of them all. And he's like, shut up. And he flicks her in the shoulder, which is enough to send her crumbling through a brick wall down to the street below, which happens to be right where Wonder Girl's walking by. So she flies up, catches Chris in midair, but she's of course on fire because that's her power. So they go to put her out. All the Wonder Girls offer up their capes to do so. And as they're putting her out, Chris comes to and she's like, what the hell? Guys, come on. And the guys come down, storming off the building and start attacking Wonder Girl. And all of the other Wonder Girls are just like, this is it, girls. She needs our help. And Cassie's like, no. Stay back. This is too much for you guys. Just get out of here and get my mom away from here. So Cassie gets into her outfit and just like, I'll take care of these clowns. So she starts fighting against them. Apparently they want to like get this all on the gram. So they tell the big Hulk guy like, hey, pull out your phone, record this, send this out on Twitter. And he's like, my fingers are too big to press the buttons. And she keeps on firing off fire blasts until she gets blindsided by the invisible guy. And she's like, all right, maybe I could use some help. So she calls up Tim Drake and she's barely able to get out like 5 words. She's like, gang, 4 powers, can't help. And line goes dead. So Raven starts up a teleportation spell. Bunker's like, should I call Beast Boy, get him over there? It's like, no. He's probably in Star Labs by now. Let's let him do his thing. We can go deal with this right now. So they get teleported over to where that is. Meanwhile, we see what Beast Boy is doing. A man is entering in through security, and he's got a little itch on his head, and a girl saying like, hey, it's totally normal to have lice. They like clean hair. So actually, it's a compliment. He's like, I don't have lice. And she's like, sure you don't. And then we see Beast Boy was the form of a tiny little lice, and he jumps off. What's louse? Is that the singular? Regardless, he jumps off, and now he's in Star Labs. So we see the Hulk guys just beating up on Wonder Girl, and it turns out the reason that they are so pissed off at Wonder Girl and the Teen Titans as a whole is because the Teen Titans have been dominating the media feeds. And as such, they're just sick of hearing about them. Like this guy's saying, I had to unfriend half of my crowd just to get you out of my feed. I'm sick of hearing about you. So Bunker, Red Robin, and Raven pop in. Bunker just makes a giant purple fist out of bricks and punches this guy off. And just like, yeah, we're here to save the day. So at that point, Cassie explains their power set. Invisible guy comes up and blindsides Robin, punches him in the face. Raven, however, is not fooled. She just picks up a brick, socks this guy upside the head. He's out of the fight. And then we cut to Star Labs, where Manchester Black and Josiah Power are watching all this unfold on the screen in front of them. And it's like, hey, check it out. Look how capable the Teen Titans are as fighters, says Manchester to Josiah. And he's like, oh yeah, they got this cool stuff. Like, look, they did this, that. And we see Beast Boy's taking the form of a mouse. And he gets on his comm and he's like, hey, Red Robin, do you want me in this fight? And he's like, what? How are you even seeing the fight? He's like, I'm in this room where Manchester Black and Josiah Power are like chatting you up and like they sound like they're really impressed, but I see the fight going on. Like, do you want me in? And he's like, no, just keep an eye on them. You're good. So and he's like, all right, well, I'll keep an eye on them. So we see that the kids are popping even more pills, trying to increase their power even more. And Chris fires off a fire blast at Cassie, and Cassie turns back to the group and is like, hey, I thought I told you to get my mom out of here. And the Hulk guy realizes, oh, did you hear that? Her mom is here. So he picks up a truck and throws it at Cassie's mom. And no one is in the vicinity to help. No one's able to do it except for one of the group of the Wonder Girls, who jumps in and pushes Cassie's mom out of the way. And the truck lands directly on her. And the Teen Titans are pissed. They knock out the Hulk guy and the remaining rest of the group. And as they're standing there, like, I can't believe you just killed someone. All of a sudden, the truck starts rising up, and we see that the girl underneath it is just holding up the truck. And she's like, what? Is everyone just going to sit there and stare at me, or are we going to take these clowns apart? As she lifts the truck over her head, and all the Teen Titans are like, oh, hell yeah. Turns out, and the book doesn't say this until next issue, I checked, but this is Tanya Spears, who over in the World's Finest book, like 5 issues ago, got the powers of Power Girl. So she is now Power Girl in the Earth Zero universe. And she is also a Wonder Girl fangirl. So, yeah, she's here. She's doing stuff. It's interesting. I will say the art style was a little bit for me. It's not that it's bad, it's that it's coming off of Kenneth Rocafort's art, and it's very different. It's a very different style, all things considered. I think it's fine on its own, but it's such a jarring change. Beyond that, I mean, the story's just continuing with what it was. I can't say it's that great for me. It still feels like, yes, it feels like there's a larger plan at play, but it feels like such a slow burn that it may as well take like 3 volumes before we're actually going to get through it. And I recognize we're on issue 5, but like, it still feels like it's going to be forever before we finally get the reveal of like, oh no, Star Labs is evil. What? So overall, I'm going to say this one is I'll give it just a flat 7. It's again, the art style's not bad for it. It's just a jarring change. And yeah, that's about the only main critique I have. Trinity of Sin, number 3, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Yvel Guichet. So last issue, the evil shadow monster thing that I forgot the name of, it's like Nara or something like that, won. It cast an evil spell and turned the world into the dark shadow version of it. So we open up with Pandora basically saying like, I was able to connect to the goodness of the human spirit, and now I can't because they're all dead, and this is a nightmare. And we see them standing amongst this cityscape that's just an MC Escher nightmare. They can barely comprehend what they see. And immediately Phantom Stranger's like, this can't be our world. This is alien or something. And Pandora's like, nope, this is it. This is Earth. It's a nightmare. And Question calls him out like, oh, we're the cause of this. We're the ones who did all this. It was Nimra. That's the name of the evil shadow beast. So Stranger like collapses. He's so upset about all this stuff. And he's also weakened because of the spells. And Question puts out the question of, why are we still alive? Why didn't the monster just kill us? And Nimra, who's still there, is just like, the spell is still technically solidifying, and I just need you guys alive while it does so. So don't worry, you'll be dead soon enough. And Stranger immediately is like, so you need us alive for the spell to finish. And he pulls out a knife and is about to plunge it into his own chest, but Nimra stops him before he can. And Nimrod's just like, I have waited billions of years. You really think I'd let you do that? Like, seriously? So he pulls Phantom Stranger close, or she, hard to say, and is like, hey, I have watched you for eons. Like, you've been going around saying like, oh, like you can go around trying to figure out the forgiveness and repentance and all that sort of stuff. But I want you to be my willing slave, to give in to every dark urge and twisted desire I have. And he's like, no. And she's like, okay, well, what if I assume a different form? And she assumes the form of Cassandra Kraft, who we introduced over in Phantom Stranger's book. And it's apparently intoxicating enough that he gives in, he shares a kiss, and in a moment he is drained of all of his humanity, and he's nothing but an empty shell, a blood puppet for her. So Question summons his magic spear. We have a scythe for Pandora. They come in and attack Nimra. But like, it doesn't do anything. Apparently Nimrod existed before death itself existed, so she's just able to put herself back together. She's like, I instantly regenerate. Like, you three are all powerful of your own world, but compared to me, you're nothing. So Nimrod summons the other three demon things that attacked him before, Yaka, Zalcote, and Siden, and they just immediately mop the floor with Question and Pandora. Like, in an instant, it's already done. And as Nimrod is saying, like, I am going to take away all of your agency, Pandora whispers a spell just beforehand, and Pandora's mind is now wiped. But before Question is done so, Nimrod's like, look, I wipe both their minds because I got plans for them, but for you, I got something special. You ask all these questions, so I'm going to let you know about everything. You're going to be aware and awake so you can bear witness. So Pandora and Stranger are marched out into the fields. Pandora is put to work on the farthest edges of the city. She's worked as a slave. Meanwhile, Stranger is made into a house slave. He's giving them massages and mud baths and stuff, and it's creepy as hell. And then Question is kept down in the torture rooms, and he's just being tortured constantly, over and over. Apparently, all of the suffering and pain that Nimrod suffered over the eons has been coalesced and is now being fed back into Question. So, after some time, we see Pandora whispers the spell again, and she gets all of her memories back, and she's like, I sent an enchantment to be able to maintain my memories. A tiny bit of myself was kept alive, and therefore all of me was able to come out of it. So she remembers who she is, where she's supposed to be, and she casts a spell to summon Stranger and Question from wherever they are, and they all teleport to just outside the city. To which they make a small fire, and it's like, okay, we need to find a way to fix the world. Like, that's all we can do right now. Stranger is ashamed and horrified of the stuff he was put through. Like, he still is hurting because of that. Meanwhile, Question is like, even without a face, Pandora's like, oh, he went through it. He had some torture there. All right. So as they're all sitting around this fire, all of a sudden a bunch of people come out of the woodworks, and they're like mutant-looking ape creatures. Like, they're almost human. And as they come out, they seem like they're about to attack, but they don't. They just, like, sniff around and start, like, reaching out. And the Trinity is like, well, why are they, like, kneeling before us? What's going on? Do they see us as gods? And they swarm up a bit closer. And they're trying to figure out what's going on, but Question is trying to, like, see into their minds, but nothing. They have no agency. They're barely even people here. It's just primal urges. But Stranger manages to summon Question's Spear of Inquiry, which apparently no one else can do, but Stranger's so super strong like that. And he plunges it down, and he gets the information from them that, yes, this is their world, and it is reshaped, but humankind did not go extinct. All of her kind, all of Nimrod's kind, were just humanity being reshaped, being remolded. And this is the rest of them. This is everyone else, and they are clinging on to their last embers of humanity. So there is still, in fact, hope. In doing so, they figure out that there's a magic box, and the magic box is hidden across the entire world, and they got to go get it without like any sort of powers to teleport them there. And it takes weeks, it takes months. The Question becomes more withdrawn. Stranger becomes more distant and like moody, and Pandora wants to give up a bunch of times. But eventually they make their way to the highest peak of this mountain, and inside the mountain they know the box is inside. And Question can't feel it, but Stranger and Pandora can. And he's like, You're sure this thing is here? And they say yes. And then he summons his Spear of Inquiry with a big krakoom, and Pandora's like, hey, we should probably keep a low profile. And he's like, yeah, you think? And we see that all of this was just a ruse. Question was actually a double agent. He was brainwashed, and he betrayed them to lead Nimrod to here so that she could get the last thing that would actually be able to save them, the redemption box. So it says, but even as I ask the question, becomes clear. Question we knew died in Nimrod's torture chambers. If she gets her hands on the box, we'll be dying with him. So, yeah. It's halfway through the book. It's a 6-issue book, and that was issue 3. What do I think? It feels like a 6-issue book. That's the thing. Is like, I appreciate the fact that they're doing this big thing of like, oh no, the entire world has been torn asunder and da-da-da. But there is an issue of like, it getting too big, if that makes sense, because then you just know like there are no stakes. Like I'm not saying I don't enjoy the story. I think the story itself is fine. It's a perfectly decently well told story. It does feel like you need to know these characters prior to coming into this book rather than learning about them here, but it's a fine story. The biggest issue is that I know none of this is going to stick. I know that like absolutely all of it is just going to be, oh, okay, and then the world gets turned back because it was too big to start with. It should have been a much smaller magical threat, but still something big enough that like, you know, maybe just go to a magical realm instead of still setting it on, no, this was Earth, that was changed, because now it's like, well, clearly it's going to get fixed. So yeah, no, it just feels like it's going to be all wrapped up, and because it's 6 issues, I definitively know there's not going to be any stakes. So overall, I think I'll probably give this one like probably a 6.5. It's just lacking a little bit of oomph to it that I don't think was ever really present in this book. Batman Eternal number 37, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Andrea Mutti, something like that. So we pick up in this issue at the Egyptian nightclub, which is currently being run by Selena, and you know, she's in charge of the mob now. She's got all of her stuff going on in her own book, and as she's looking out over the crowd, she's just like, ah, yes, this is, if you've got to hide some money, it's best to hide it in the place where nobody notices that much money being sent around. So she lays down in bed. She's got a bunch of cats crawling around with her. And as she's about to cuddle up with the cats, all of a sudden she is attacked by a man from the Ghost Dragons, which he seems familiar. I think this might have been in Nightwing. I could be wrong, but regardless, he attacks with a flaming sword. And she's like, oh, you know, you're not quite as quiet as a mouse. So she gets the drop on him, manages to kick him out a window, and is like, yeah, well, I have all the rest of the families on my side, and there's no way that you're going to be able to get the drop on me, because in a position like mine, I've always got to keep an eye out. And we see security comes in and gets the guy. So we then go to the apartment of Luke Fox, aka Batwing. His roommate Rory is complaining about eating some bad tacos, and as he goes to the bathroom, we see that there is an old woman there, a ghost who's sewing, saying like, oh, my boy Amadeus, the other boys look so comfortable in their skin. Now you can wear theirs. And she holds up a blanket with a boy's face sewn into it. And Rory screams out bloody murder as Luke Fox comes over and he's like, hey, what's wrong? Did you eat from that taco place? I swear to God, that's going to give you nightmares. And he's like, no, there was a ghost. And he's like, okay, well, it's probably just a bad dream. You're good. But then he walks back to his armor and he's like, how come ever since the Arkham thing, I feel like my armor brought back a haunted house with it? So we cut over to Batman, who's down at the port. He's following a lead, and he kicks in this guy named Longshore Lewis. And he's like, hey, you have a hand in human trafficking. I want to know if you have some Arkham inmates who are looking to make a run for it. Ivy, Scarecrow. And Lewis is like, I don't know nothing about nothing, Mr. Batman. They ain't down here. And he's like threatening him when all of a sudden one of those big like loading dock hooks swings out and almost takes out Batman. And turns out it's Killer Croc swinging it. And he's like, Batman, look, take my word on it. This guy's telling the truth. And Batman's just like, Croc, maybe you're a part of this, huh? Maybe I shouldn't believe the thing that comes out of your mouth. And he's like, look, if any of those freaks had come through here, I would have eaten them myself. But like, we've got unfinished business, especially me and Bane. And he's like, yeah, well, you got nothing left. You don't have any friends or followers, so maybe you cut a deal with them. Maybe Bane beat you up so bad they let him by. I heard what happened during Forever Evil. And Croc's like, keep pushing me, man. I'm telling you the truth here. I'm telling you what's up. You and your little buddy Jason Bard can figure out some charges to put on me in the meantime. But for now, get out of here. And Batman's like, all right, well, look, if I find out that Bane skipped country because of you, I'm going to be making myself a new bat suit out of crocodile skin. And as he's going away, Croc puts up little bat ears, and he's like, oh, I'm so cranky because my tights are too short, and they're riding up in my tight ass. And immediately Selena shows up as Catwoman, just like, well, I can't, I don't know if I can offer you anything in terms of a threat or whatever, but I can offer you some good old-fashioned revenge. So we cut down to the Gotham Underground. I was hoping I'd never see the place again. And we see a Greek restaurant is down there. And all of the people, all of the Arkham inmates are hanging out, and that is Mr. Freeze, Clayface, Scarecrow, Joker's daughter, Poison Ivy, and Bane. And Scarecrow's taking charge, saying, "Hey, all right, we it's crazy up in Gotham. We can go ahead and enact the next part of our plan. We can do something to take us out of Gotham." And immediately Freeze is like, "Bro, you sold your soul in Arkham. And do you think you were just going to let you be a leader?" And he's like, "Hey, I'm doing what I had to do. But, like, if nobody else is going to be able to step up here, like, yeah, we have superior power over normal people. Who's with me?" And Ivy's like, "Look, I will team up with you just because I don't want any of you guys to be, like, stab me in the back." And Clayface is like, "I mean, it's messy out there for a solo act, and me and Ivy got a history, but yeah, I'll go with wherever Ivy goes." And Freeze is like, "Bro, this failed during Forever Evil because we were all up against each other. If we work together, there might be a chance this will work out. But I swear to God, if you betray me, I will freeze your fingers off." And Joker's daughter's like, "Sure, I'm crazy." And at that point, Bane, who's been eating an apple this whole time, spits it out. And he just throws it away and walks off. And Mr. Freeze is like, "Well, if the guy who's a master of strategy doesn't want a part of this, maybe we shouldn't." And Scarecrow comes over being like, "Dude, hey, stay with us and I'll get you Batman." And Bane's like, "You'll get me Batman. Bro, you need me to protect you from Batman." And he's like, "But why, Bane?" And Bane's just holding him by his throat. And he's like, "The only reason I stuck around here for as long as I did was to make sure that you guys didn't smell the gas leak that I caused. I'm totally going to blow your asses up as soon as I walk out of here. But yeah, you have nothing to offer me." And he's like, "Wait, hold on. I was taking a look at your venom. I can make it twice as strong with less side effects." And Bane is like, "Yeah, you can definitely do that. You are a good chemist. Like, I feel like it's within your power." And he's like, "Absolutely. I will totally do that." And Bane's like, "All right, I'll stay with you guys and you'll pay for me with venom." And we see that watching this entire meeting is a little black cat with a camera around its neck that is clearly recording things. So we then cut over to a bar where Bullock and Sawyer are talking. And as they're saying, like, "Man, everything's going to hell. It's all crazy out there," in walks Jason Bard, and he's using his cane. He's still got his limp, and they go to leave. And he's like, "Wait, guys, hold on. Look, you two are the last two Onyx cops around. I need your guys' help. There's an infection in the city. We got to take it out." And his cane slips and he falls to the ground, and he's having trouble getting up. And he outstretches his hand saying, like, "Can you guys help me?" And Bullock's like, "I gave you a hand when you first showed up in Gotham. You didn't deserve it then. You don't deserve it now." So as the Arkham gang is all falling asleep in this restaurant, we see Bane is in the back pulling a Rocky, punching a pork loin hanging from the ceiling. And Poison Ivy comes in saying, like, "Hey, Bane, I'm also a chemist, and I can do things a dozen times better than Scarecrow can. So why don't you let me do it, and I can let you become a god?" And Bane's just like, "I mean, maybe." But we see that, once again, this is being recorded by Catwoman, and she's like, "Oh, man, kitty cams. Whenever I see a Penguin again, I got to give him a pat on the back for giving me this idea." So we see Batman's taking stock of his inventory, which, because he's lost all of his money, is getting very, very low. And he goes and he looks in the sky and sees a very makeshift bat signal, which was put in place by Selina, who's just lounging out in her lingerie on the balcony. And Batman comes up being like, "That's a registered trademark. You can't do that." So she's like, "Okay, look, I'm sorry. I just I wanted to call you." And he's like, "Look, you don't get to call me. Not with that signal. Not after you've done it." And he's like, "What? After what? I took a side. I've been controlling the gangs. Like, that's why I want to give you this present. I'm going to give you the worst of Arkham. I'm going to tell you exactly where they are." And as they start talking, Julia gets a call from Batwing, and it's just like, "Hey, Batwing, what's up?" And Luke Fox is like, "Hey, can you get me everything in the back computer about hauntings?" As we see that his apartment is now overrun with a bunch of ghosts. So Luke Fox ain't out of the plot yet, ladies and gentlemen. Honestly, probably should be. I don't know where this one's going to lead, but it feels like having him almost die, accepting his death, and being like terrified, and then being pulled out of it. That's enough. That was a good story for him. I'm glad he came to it. It did the whole thing of science versus faith. You're good. You don't need to do more. As for what's going on with the Catwoman, the Arkham inmates, it feels like the start of a plot. I don't know where it's going. Personally, I'm not invested yet, but it's got time. We can see where it actually ends up here. So I'm going to say this is I'll go with a 6.5. It probably would have been a 7, and nothing against Andrea Moody here because some of the panels really work. I like her Bane a lot, but her Luke Fox Batwing is not okay. And apologies, I am assuming it's a her. I don't know for sure, but it's got its ups and downs, which brings it to a 6.5. Future's End, number 33, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen. Art by Aaron Lopresti and Stephen Thompson. So, this issue picks up outside of Earth, where everyone is on the ant farm, aka the headquarters of Shade. Stormwatch and Frankenstein and Amethyst and all them versus a bunch of giant monsters. And they want control of Engineer in order to take out Brainiac. And Hawkman says, no way. And Engineer says, I can speak for myself. No way, and then begins firing. So it's an all-out fight, and we basically see Black Adam just immediately takes the lead, flies through the heads of all of these kaijus and hearts, and just blasts through and saying, like, they're dead. Are we done now? And Hawkman's like, oh, I like this guy. So at that point, Father Time's like, oh, you want monsters. You haven't seen anything yet. But as Father Time is talking, we see the Atom, Ray Palmer, jumps into Father Time's mouth and says, hey, I had enough of this. He gets over the intercoms to all of Shade and says, Father Time has been an absolute dick this entire time, like manipulating all of us through bribery and fear. That ends today. Shade can be a super cool place, and that is what it will be from this day forward. Ray Palmer, and taking control. And he moves through Father Time's bloodstream until it gets to their brain, and on the brain is a thing, a parasite, which turns out to be the true Father Time, who's like, oh, you should be honored, Palmer. You're the first person to see the real me in 300 years. So we then cut over to Vegas, where Faraday is talking to Sergeant Brock, and they're talking about Ethan Boyer, who is the guy who's really good at like genetic stuff from like 20 issues ago. And Faraday's saying, like, yeah, he was one of us. He took the fall and did stuff like for Cadmus. He was branded as criminal. He doesn't play well with others, so that's the reason that we didn't bring him back on. And they're saying, like, okay, well, why do you think he's going to come back? And it's like, well, I don't intend to give him a choice. Susan is going to make him cooperate. And Rock's like, yeah, about her. So then we cut over to a motel where 50 Sue, wearing Deathstroke's helmet, is just torturing this Ethan guy, and he's begging, like, wait, no more, please. And she's like, all right, I'm waiting. And he's like, for what? You didn't tell me what you wanted. So she takes off the Deathstroke mask, and he's like, why are you dressed like Deathstroke? And she's like, you can call me Sequel, because, like, I'm a self-contained story, but also something that continues on a preceding work, and I'm completing Slade's work. I'm honoring his memory. Even though he's a dick who abandoned me, and screw him, I'm still doing that. You're never going to do that to me, right, Ethan? And he's like, no. So at that point, 50 Sue goes and sits in the corner, and Ethan's like, did you say something about Faraday? And she's like, see for yourself, and just teleports him out of there. So she gets up, exits the motel room, and outside, I completely blank on this dude's name. It's the guy who was working with Grifter, who was then pawned off on Voodoo and the other girls. And he's on the phone with Grifter saying, like, hey, man, I can't believe you sent me to Grifter, or to Voodoo. She's crazy, along with all this stuff. And I thought you were dead. And, like, can we, like, hang out? Can you get me out of here? And he's like, what do you mean your name is, what is it? Cole Lang. What do you mean you got married? What is situation? By convenience? I don't understand any of this. And 50 Sue's listening in is just like, oh, he's talking to Grifter. Neat. And so she walks over, punches this dude in the stomach, takes the wind out of his breath, steals the cell phone, and says, why didn't you call me first? And then it cuts over to Grifter on the phone like, oh, God, this never ends. So we then cut over to Terry McGinnis and Plastique. Terry is running scans on the entire planet for any sign of Brother Eye. No luck, no dice, nothing's coming up. And Plastique is like, how long are you going to keep doing this? Like, I don't know, 30 years? Sure, let's go with that. And she keeps on doing it. He keeps sending it over and over again and saying, like, okay, well, look, Brother Eye is gone. You've run the scan like 40 times. Like, he's definitely gone. And it's like, well, no, because I'm still here, that means my future still happened. And if my future still happened, then Brother Eye is still alive somewhere here, and I need to find it. And Plastique is like, okay, well, what if it's a multiverse theory? What if it's hypertime? Like, what if your timeline can still exist because it's not a linear cause and effect? Like, your timeline is still out there while this universe is going to continue down a different path. And he's like, I mean, I hope that's not the case, because then I feel like I came here for nothing. Like, all this was just for nothing to begin with. And I don't know, it'd be kind of a letdown, even though it's exactly what my goal is. And she's like, okay, well, maybe the world doesn't need saving anymore. And he's like, well, that kind of bums me out. So they run the scan again. And as they're saying all this, we see Lois Lane has plugged in her cell phone, which was connected to Brother Eye, and it goes through power cables. It jumps all around the world until eventually it manages to find the body of future Plastique in Terrifitech and gets inside of it. So we then go over to Firestorm, who's still just flying around town, doing whatever, and Madeline's all about the flying part. She loves that. And Jason's like, okay, look, we need to go and get the thing from the teleportation tubes, the records that will allow me to see exactly how we merged and how I can make us unmerge then. So she flies over. It's surrounded by a huge amount of security, and he's like, no, you just need to fly in through the top, and as you're flying down, you need to change the rubble into air, and then you can fly right through it. And she's like, what? I can't do that. And he's like, no, you totally can. It's absolutely one of Firestorm's powers. You can absolutely do it. So she dives down at Mach speeds in order to get past security's noticing, and she goes through and she concentrates and it turns into air. And as she gets through, she's like, hey, it worked. And he's like, yeah, I can't believe it. And he's like, what do you mean you can't believe it? And he's like, I mean, we can't unmerge. I didn't know if you could do the other Firestorm's powers. And she's like, don't do that. I am so sick of people lying to me. Just, if you don't know, just tell me that, okay? And he's like, all right, fair enough. So they go over to the teleportation tube. Underneath, there's a little black box that he needs to open up and get the recording set out of. And it's like, oh yeah, I can't believe what that sicko Dr. Yamazaki did to me here. And then a voice from behind says, sicko, huh? Well, you're the one who caused all this and tried to kill me. And we see a big mass explosion happen. And standing behind in full power armor is Dr. Yamazaki, who now goes by the name Dr. Polaris. I know that's a poll. I think Polaris... Is that a Green Lantern villain? It's either Green Lantern or Legion. It's definitely a spacey one. Yeah, so Dr. Polaris is here. That's neat, I guess. Beyond that, I think the coolest part for me is going to be the Shade storyline of Father Time finally getting knocked out. That is on the cover of the next issue, so I'm into that. I like a little bit of continuity changing, even if this is a 100% out of continuity story. It's just it's an okay issue. I think there's a little bit of humor to it. We're getting the pacing down a little bit better. My only main concern right now is the Faraday, Sergeant Rock voodoo, that whole side of things. It feels a little bit too complicated still because everything's left up in the air. With Cadmus being thrown to the winds, it's a little bit confusing as to what are they actually doing now. So a little bit of clarification there wouldn't hurt. But beyond that, this is easily 7. I wouldn't say it goes any higher than that, but it's easily hitting that 7. Earth 2 World's End number 11, written by Bennett, Johnson, and Wilson, art by a bunch of people. So, last issue Darkseid got freed from his prison, and then this issue is literally just, let's do that plot. Nothing else. So we stay on Apocalypse in the Mobius chamber. Darkseid has been freed by Mr. Miracle, and he's like, ha ha ha, you stupid idiot. So the Boom Spheres have managed to free Darkseid, and immediately it's an all-out brawl. But not just that, Barda has betrayed the group. She starts swiping at Fury, and she's like, Darkseid will reward me well. So at that point, Darkseid's like, no man-made creation's going to be able to end me. So Mr. Terrific and Sandman, who are there, are like, let's just stay out of the way of all this. This is a fight between the gods. So the fight manages to continue. Mr. Miracle and Fury try to get out of there as fast as possible. There are a bunch of little spider bots called rectifiers who come in and try to attack them, and they start, punching their way through as best they can. Fury gets grabbed by Barda and pulled back down. And she's like, I've been waiting a long time to kill you. Meanwhile, Darkseid takes off after Mr. Miracle as he tries flying away. So Darkseid fires off his Omega beams, or sorry, it says the Omega effect, but it says beams. But they get sucked into the boom spheres, which then obviously powers them up significantly. And he's like, okay, hold on, that's a question. And Mr. Miracle uses the boom spheres and starts pushing them closer and closer together around Darkseid. And Darkseid tries to take control of them, but Mr. Miracle comes up with the idea of like, wait a minute, these things can absorb all this energy, all this crazy amount of energy. What happens if they try to absorb each other? So he manages to get them close enough to each other that they connect, and Darkseid says like, look, you may have been born a god, but I made myself a god. Nothing's going to take me out. And then there's the giant like nuclear-sized explosion that seemingly explodes half of Apocalypse here. So Fury and Barda get blown out, and Barda's knocked out. Fury stays put, and she's like, oh, you don't get to kill me after all, Barda. And so Darkseid steps up, and he's got Mr. Miracle like grabbed by the collar, and is like, oh, Fury, you took out Barda. If you join my side, I'll make you one of the Furies. So kneel before me. And he's like, okay. And immediately Mr. Miracle's like, oh, come on. You're going to Darkseid's side as well? And so Darkseid's like, okay, I'm going to say this once, kid. Take my hand. Be on my side. Otherwise, you're going to die with the rest of the people on this planet. And Mr. Miracle stays silent. He's like, very well. You're going to die with him. So we go to the Court of Apocalypse, where all these weird Apocalyptians that we followed for whatever now have to obey Fury. And they're just like, you're clearly a traitor. Like, 100% you're going to betray us. And they're just like, yeah, well, that's why I fit in with the rest of you. And it's like, touche. So then this one steps up, the Keeper of the Lore, and starts questioning, just being like, did your Amazon sisters scream when you betrayed them? It's like, yes. Did your father... and your father was betrayed and slaughtered? Yes. And your dear mother, did you cry out in agony? Yes. And like, she's about to attack this guy, and then she remembers what Mr. Miracle said about controlling her anger, and she calms down and just like, all right, I'm fine, I'm good. So at that point, she walks down the hall, and she's approached by Terry Sloan. And Terry Sloan's like, I'm not actually Terry Sloan. A name that I'm also going by is The Traveler. And I need you to be aware, I'm not from this earth. Okay? That's not a thing. But I need you to tell me where Mr. Miracle's being held and a time and place where both of you should be. And Fury's like, what, you think I want to rescue Mr. Miracle? I'm not a traitor. I fight for only one side. Meanwhile, we cut to Mr. Miracle, who's being tortured in this chamber in a pit of apocalypse. So he's not having a good time. And he says, oh, there's only one true father worth fighting for, and that's High Father. I've realized my way. And as he's saying this, Fury busts into the room, and he's like, oh, what, Darkseid sent you to finish me off? And she's like, no, you idiot, I'm here to save you. I'm here to join you. And she's like, you already betrayed me once. How can I trust you this time? And she's like, why would I go back to Darkseid? I spent most of my life brainwashed. I wasn't going to do it again, but I had to do something in the moment in order to get us out of there. And he's like, no, I don't believe you. And she's like, fine, whatever. So she rips off the machine that he's kept in, managing to save him. And he's just like, oh, maybe you should have left me down there. I believe you now, by the way, but maybe you should have left me down there. Our allies are too weak to win. And Fury's like, oh, well, I refuse to fight for Darkseid. So I had to do something, and you're going to help me out here. And they pass by Darkseid's throne room, and they listen in because Terry Sloan, Traveler, is down there in his court and is like, hey, I want to talk to Darkseid. And Darkseid's like, what up? And he's like, look, that's not my world. I'm not of Earth 2. I know about the multiverse. I know about New Genesis. And I know that this Earth was traded as easily as you traded your firstborn sons. And Darkseid's like, what do you want, dude? What is this all about? And he's like, oh, I'm telling you what I've always wanted. I want to make a deal. And it turns out the deal is that New Genesis, High Father and the gang, have agreed to a peace treaty between the two as long as Darkseid kills Earth 2 and only Earth 2. He allows him to... Darkseid's like, High Father's not going to interfere. New gods are not going to interfere as long as Darkseid keeps himself to feeding on Earth 2's universe alone. And Mr. Miracle and Fury hear all this, and they're like, the new gods are just as bad as the Apocalyptians. All of this sucks. The gods suck. We got to just fight with the humans on their Earth because they're the only ones who are willing to fight and die for their families. Highfather's just as guilty. I will fight with them. I will be their miracle. And that's where the trade paperback leaves off as well. Okay. It's a good twist. I'm not going to say it's not. I like the idea that, like, they are literally condemned by the gods themselves to lose this fight. It ups the stakes. It makes this thing feel much more fated, and that, like, it is just this apocalyptic, you cannot survive this, but god damn it, are they going to try anyway? I like that. That's solid in its own right. Only criticism I'm going to have here is that it already kind of felt that way. You know, like they have this whole thing about like the bell, the like the gong of apocalypse or whatever, the oracle, like that was saying which family was going, or not family, which Earth planet was going to be killed. Like they went through this whole thing of saying how fated this destruction was already. So to say that, oh, but now it's like extra super fated, like it doesn't add that much to it. It adds a bit more in terms of like scope, but they're still just as doomed as they were before. So, I don't know. It's a give and a take, but ultimately I do like what's coming out of it. And the fact that Darkseid is now directly involved is a lot of stuff just coming to the forefront. So, all in all, I do like the issue. I think I'd probably end up giving it, I'd say 7.5. I think it's almost standalone in its own right. It's not anything fantastic, but I like the fact that they do come to these realizations and things are worse than they ever have been before. So, yeah, making some progress in terms of World's End. And that's it. That is all the comics put out by DC Comics this December 17th, 2014. And as I said at the top of the episode, next week is weird. Why is it weird? Well, DC said, hey, you know, people are going to be getting a lot of spending money on Christmas. All those kids at the comic shop, they're going to be loaded. What if we put out 23 comics on Christmas Eve? We would put out 26, but unfortunately some of them are actually forced to be weekly. So we're going to put out 23 on Christmas Eve and only 3 on New Year's Eve. So that way, they'll have all the comics they can buy with all that new spending money. And that's great for them. Bravo. Brilliant decision there in the business department. But for me, doing this show where I am trying to read the books as they came out, you screwed me, marketing. You absolutely screwed me. So I have made the executive decision, and I am saying I'm not playing your game, DC. I am splitting it up the way that I think it should have been split up in the first place. So, the way this is going to play out is next week, out of the 23 comics, I will be doing 14 of them. The remaining 9 will be on the next week, along with the 3 comics that were already there. Cool? Cool. I don't care if it's not cool. So, 14 comics that I'm doing next week in alphabetical order are Aquaman, Arkham Manor, Batman Eternal, Deathstroke, Earth 2 World's End, The Flash, Future's End, Gotham by Midnight, Infinity Man, Justice League Dark, Red Lanterns, Secret Origins, G.I. Zombie, and Superman. Okay? All that's there. And then the next week, we'll have some annuals, we'll have a special, and then some other normal comics that I just think fit better there than on this week. So, if you have any comments on the list of books that I've decided on and why they're stupidly put here, feel free to let me know in the comments beneath this YouTube video, or if you were listening in the audio, I don't know, go find a YouTube video. We also have some social media profiles. We have a Discord. We have a subreddit. We have a Patreon. I have a Blue Sky. If you can find me, you win a prize. The prize will not be anything good. Anyway, that is pretty much it for the show. Be sure to interact positively, do the likes and the subscribes, and blah, 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 blah. Coming up on Christmas, hope you have bought things for your loved ones. I personally have not. And I am going to be using the absolute abysmal thing that is Prime shipping in order to get it here on time. So don't be like me. Go buy things. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, listening, consuming this podcast. Be sure to give it good interactions and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.